Chapter 45-77. Amitabha. Zhen Kong threw down his magic wand and prostrated himself on the ground. Master, you are right. This is what Mahavairakana said in Lei Temple. It is because disciple committed too many murders that I attracted the demonic tribulation. That fake Zhen Kong is the manifestation of disciple's inner demon. By killing the fake Zhen Kong, disciple will be killing my inner demon. Disciple has also said in front of revered one that from today onwards, disciple will not dare to recklessly kill. Excellent, excellent. There is a saying in the secular world that a prodigal who repents is more precious than gold. Zhen Kong, if you can really change, then master's nagging for so many years was not in vain. Chunzeng was overjoyed when he heard this and took a few steps forward. Damn it, Zhenhan. Zhen Jie said angrily, did you not hear? Hurry up and call Chang Chao out. Yes, eldest senior brother. Seeing Zhen Jie, who even Tai Bai Jingxing did not want to provoke, Zhen Han hurriedly floated to the front of the straw hut. As he walked in, he called out, Master, don't be anxious. Amitabha. Chunzeng smiled and stood still. He looked at Zhen Kong, who had his head lowered, and said with a smile, Master believes that this is the real Zhen Kong. Chang Chao rubbed his eyes as he was dragged out of the straw hut by Zhen Han. He looked around in confusion. Zhen Jie squeezed out a smile that he thought was amiable and asked, Chang Chao, you said before that you can differentiate between the real Zhen Kong and the fake Zhen Kong. To be honest, I do not believe those people from Lei Temple. I am afraid that they are trying to deceive Master. I believe that you also do not wish for a demon to harm Master. Can you see if this Zhen Kong is the real Zhen Kong? Alright. Chang Chao's eyes flashed and he nodded vigorously at Zhen Jie before looking at Zhen Kong, who was prostrating on the ground. Zhen Kong. Zhen Jie yelled, raise your head and let the grass see if you are the real Zhen Kong. AI, eldest senior brother. Zhen Kong said and raised his head, this little brother is Zhen Kong. I can even recognize Lei Temple's Mahavairakana, revered one. Zhuo Chao trembled when he saw Zhen Kong lifting his head. His eyes were filled with fear as he instinctively dodged towards Chunzong. Chunzong took a look and sighed, Zhen Jie, there is no need to look anymore. This is the real Zhen Kong. Zhen Jie had already asked Yarrow Grass before. Now that he saw Yarrow Grass's fear and tightly clenched hands, how could he not know that this was the hatred in Yarrow Grass's heart? However, he still restrained his temper and asked, Chao Chao, you don't have to be afraid. If he is the fake Zhen Kong, I can kill him with my rake. If he really is Zhen Kong, just nod your head. Chang Chao stared at Zhen Kong. After a while, he nodded gently and hid his face in Chunzang's chest. Tears flowed from his eyes and the hatred in his eyes slowly turned into relief. Zhen Kong's expression also relaxed. He looked at Zhen Jie and said, eldest senior brother, you can rest assured now, right? Of course I can't rest assured. Zhen Jie raises its hoof and slaps down on Zhen Kong's shoulder. Zhen Kong doesn't even have time to dodge. Zhen Jie curses, I was just chasing after 3 Yao Kings and you caused me so much trouble. Can't you just let me be less worried? You actually let Tai Bai Jingxing of the Immortal Palace and Manjushri of the Thunder Temple come over. You really made me lose face. Go, why aren't you going to beg for alms for your master? Also, scout the path and see if there are any demons ahead. Yes, senior brother. Zhen Kong smiled and said, I will go now. Then, Zhen Kong said to Chunzong, Master, disciple got a peach for you last time. This time, disciple will get some pears for you to then, without waiting for Chunzong to say anything, Zhen Kong somersaulted on the cloud and quickly left. Sigh, people will grow up. After going through this calamity, Zhen Kong finally understood. Amitabha, Buddhism is boundless. Chunzong placed his palms together and bowed towards nirvana. Then he said to Zhen Han, pack up your things. We should be on our way. After being delayed for so long, it is time to find a good family for Xiao Chao. Yes, master. Zhen Han nodded and took out her Buddhist staff to pack up the scriptures. Draconic horse Zhen Feng smiled bitterly and walked in front of Zhen Jie. Then he obediently enlarged his body. And this is not bad. Zhen Jie's body swayed and lay down on draconic horse Zhenfeng's back. He stretched his waist and said with a smile, "Damn it, I didn't sleep well at the bottom of the seat." Then, Zhen Jie realized that he had misspoken and hurriedly said, "Xiao Chao, come to me. You can't always let my master carry you." Then, Zhen Jie lifted Xiao Chao from the ground and placed him on draconic horse's back. Draconic horse Zhenfeng was angry but did not dare to say anything. He only muttered, "Damn it, I am the 10th prince of the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace." Chunzong looked at his disciples and unconsciously smiled. His footsteps became lighter and he walked in front of them with his Buddhist staff in hand. Cultivation and the heavenly Tao had no concept of time. Unknowingly, close to 50 years had passed. During these 50 years, many things had happened in the 3 continents. The grand event of the 1,000 demons' sacred realm and the 7 sages becoming sworn brothers had become an old legend. The demon race had already replaced the previous 6 sages with the 7 sages. Every time the first sage was mentioned, they would be referring to the heaven-defying Thunder Phoenix and not the golden-winged Great Peng. However, what puzzled the demon race and surprised the human race was that the bloody storm they had expected did not appear. The heaven-defying Thunder Phoenix Great Sage did not force his way into the 1,000 demons' sacred realm. He only took the 6 demon realms offered by the 6 sages in name and did not show up again. There was no fighting for benefits. The strength of the 1,000 demons' sacred realm was not weakened. Naturally, the human race was extremely disappointed. The demon race also had different thoughts. Some felt that the heaven-defying Thunder Phoenix Great Sage was too weak and would not be able to survive in the Great Sage Hall for long. However, most of the demon race rejoiced and believed that the heaven-defying Thunder Phoenix Great Sage was the true first sage of the demon race. He deserved the title. The demon realms that did not belong to the 6 sages took the initiative to approach the heaven-defying Thunder Phoenix Great Sage's 6 demon realms. The first was naturally the Light Beast's Light Demon Realm. There were many more after that, but these demon realms were not big. Later on, the heaven-defying Thunder Phoenix Great Sage chose a demon realm that was neither too big nor too small as his own, combining it with the previous 6 demon realms and changing its name. This name was not out of the expectations of the 6 sages. They were called the Dubhe Demon Realm, the Heavenly Jade Demon Realm, the Fekta Demon Realm, the Migrez Demon Realm, the Alioth Demon Realm, the Mizar Demon Realm, and the Alcade Demon Realm. Of course, the demon race was still the demon race. Their bloodline was filled with competitiveness, and there was no such thing as modesty and courtesy. After the 7 great sages became sworn brothers, there was a rare period of peace. Then, when they saw their own strength increase, they had other thoughts, and the demon realm began to fight again. There were even some demon realms close to the hidden immortal continent that had plans to encroach on the human race. However, they did not dare to carry out these plans for the time being because there were faint rumors about the 3 demon realms in the sky concealing ridge. The heaven-defying Thunder Phoenix Great Sage had a very good relationship with the Taoist Grand Ascension stage of the human race. No one dared to take the first step and risk offending the first sage of the demon race. However, since there were rumors, there were naturally waves. 50 years was too short. Perhaps in another 50 years, these small waves would become a big wave. The 1,000 demons' sacred realm of the demon race was prosperous and many things had happened. The hidden immortal continent and western paradise of the human race were not peaceful either. There were also many strange things that people talked about enthusiastically. However, among these things, there were a few that were the most famous. The first was that the literature palace of the Immortal Palace had a master. It was a literature star that no one had ever heard of before. His strength was close to a supreme realm. This literature star's name was even more eye-catching. He was directly called Wenchu. How many humans had there been since ancient times? How many sages and literature stars had there been? Who would dare to directly use the name of the literature star? However, this Wenchu was called Wenchu. Moreover, not only did the Confucian cultivators not have any objections, but even the Immortal Palace did not dare to say anything. This was because Wenchu had given the Immortal Palace the complete 5 cheese origin technique. This was the long-cherished wish of countless generations of Confucian cultivators. Finally, at this moment, they had gotten it. The immortal palace naturally returned the favor. They called Wen Chu an immortal master and treated him with the respect of all Confucian cultivators in the world. At first, the 4 great clans were dissatisfied, and the 100 clans were resentful. Wen Chu did not go to the immortal palace to enter the hall of literature and music. Instead, he went to the summit of a nameless mountain to meet the scholars of the world and fight the Confucian generals of the various clans. After 10 years, he had never tasted defeat. The 4 clans did not say anything. After the immortal palace sent down an auspicious sign, they issued an imperial decree to call Wen Chu an immortal master and welcome him to the literature palace. The place where Wen Chu and the Confucian cultivators fought was called the Literature Peak by later generations. Many literati traveled thousands of miles to pay their respects. The appearance of the literature master was too sudden. Many people speculated about his identity, including the majority of the 4 clans. They believed that this was a chess piece that the immortal palace had planted long ago. The literature master was originally a disciple of the Sun clan. However, the immortal palace was at a disadvantage right now. Immortal Emperor Gaochen had no choice but to use this important chess piece against the other clans. Moreover, the Saint of all Saints had appeared in the Thousand Demons sacred realm, and the Nanwu Methria Buddha had appeared in the Pure Land world. The Confucian cultivators of the hidden immortal continent were already at a disadvantage. The immortal palace had invited the master of the literature Star Palace, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Of course, what made the disciples of the various clans the happiest was that since Wen Chu was regarded as an immortal master, it meant that he was the master of all the Confucian cultivators in the world. The method of 5 Qis unification that he presented to the immortal palace was naturally the supreme scripture of all the Confucian cultivators in the world. It was no longer something that the immortal palace could monopolize. Both the 4 great clans and the 100 schools of thought could cultivate it. This was indeed extremely important for the development of the Confucian cultivators in the human race. 50 years was too short. The Confucian cultivators of the world were waiting for the 5 Qis origin technique to be announced gradually. Chapter 45-78. Regarding one of the 3 continents, Nirvana, there were 2 major events, one happy and one sad. What made all the Buddhist sects in the world sad was that just as Layin Temple welcomed the arrival of Methria Buddha the world rebelled against Layin Temple. No one knew what had happened in the Layin Temple. The Methria Buddha and the world-honored one had actually brought nearly 40% of the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and Arhats of the Layin Temple to open another Dao field in the Shaolin Long Temple of the Great Snow Mountain. Xiling Long Temple was just a small and shabby temple before. Most people didn't even know that there was such a small temple in the world. Now, Xiling Long Temple was famous again. Of course, Methria Buddha the world's place couldn't be Xiling Long Temple located in Snowy Mountain. Methria Buddha the world waved the wonderful tree of 7 treasures and used great Buddhist power to split open the void in Snowy Mountain. With the power of thousands of Buddhas and the faith of millions, he rebuilt a hall. Methria Buddha the world preached the essence of Buddhism in this hall every day. Although in the eyes of the Buddhas, hundreds of millions of Buddhist disciples had long divided Buddhism into 2 branches, one called Layin Temple and the other called Xiling Long Temple. In fact, the thousands of Buddhas in Xiling Long Temple understood that there was no plaque outside the hall where they cultivated. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Buddhism had also asked Methria Buddha the world in person, but Methria Buddha the world only smiled and said, "I'm the future Buddha Lord, how can I snatch the incense of the current Buddha Lord? The cultivation of the philosophers is still in the future." Since then, the thousands of Buddhas in Xiling Long Temple didn't ask about this matter anymore. They only listened to the lectures every day and discussed the essence of Buddhism. The difference between Xiling Long Temple and Layin Temple was that Methria Buddha the world not only preached the essence of Buddhism that he had comprehended, but also led thousands of Buddhas to chant and discuss. Each Buddha and Bodhisattva could share their knowledge with the other Buddhas and discuss with each other. In Layin Temple, Methria Buddha the world preached by himself. The thousands of Buddhas only listened and didn't speak. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Buddhism also had doubts. Maitreya Buddha the world laughed and said, "The connection between nirvana and the Buddhist kingdom is broken, so it's hard for us to determine the authenticity of what we have learned. The Mahavairakana world venerable might be one of the Buddha's avatars, but I haven't been in contact with him for a long time. Although we have different positions and different Buddha fruits, we are all disciples of Buddha. What we have learned may be a little different, but the overall trend is correct." Although Maitreya Buddha and the world-honored one didn't say anything more, the 1,000 Buddhas already understood. They all chanted the Buddha's name, Namo Maitreya Buddha. The Buddha's aura in the entire exquisite temple became even more exuberant. Although the Shaolin temple had split up and all the Buddhas were mourning, there was no war in the Nirvana world. The Laiyin temple and the Shaolin temple did not have any confrontation. Rather than saying it was a sad matter, it was better to say it was a peaceful breakup. The other thing was a real happy event for the Buddhism sect. After a long and arduous journey and 50 years of hardship, Chunzong and his disciples finally entered Yu province from another route of the hidden immortal continent. After more than 270 years, the sutra seeking in bliss finally came to an end. Tens of thousands of people were once again looking forward to the end of this grand event. The end of the sutra seeking in bliss was also the beginning of the Great Integration. From then on, the golden body of Namo Maitreya Buddha could be consecrated in the Jiangchao ridge of the town of immortals. The scriptures and doctrines of the Confucian cultivators could also be taught in the Nirvana world. The immortal palace and the Laiyin temple could no longer interfere with the hidden immortal continent and the Nirvana world on the surface. As for the sutra seeking in bliss after the coast of the East Sea, it did not go as smoothly as Jinjie expected. In addition to the abrupt appearance of the 2 demon kings of the 1,000 Demons sacred realm, there were also more and more Confucian cultivators who came out of nowhere. As a result, the immortal palace did not need to arrange any more tribulations. These troubles had already caused Jinjie, who had always been lazy, to complain incessantly. However, the Confucian cultivators of the human tribe had an advantage over the great demons of the demon tribe. Although they took action, they would never eat Chunzang's body as an elixir of immortality. They would never endanger Chunzang's life. At most, they would only threaten him. In the face of these threats, Chunzang only recited the sutra and treated them as nothing. The human tribe Confucian cultivators were helpless and could only vent their anger on Chunzang's disciple. Zhen Han was a member of the Immortal Palace, so the Confucian cultivators would not make things difficult for him. Dragon horse Zhen Feng was from the East Sea Dragon Palace. Although the Confucian cultivators wanted to deal with him, he kept saying that he was the 10th prince of the East Sea Dragon Palace. The Confucian cultivators could only believe him and not believe him. As for Zhenjie, his strength was close to the 9th level of origin energy. Even the sage of literature was not his match, let alone an angry martial grandmaster. Therefore, the most unlucky one was Zhen Kong. After Zhen Kong experienced the real and fake Zhen Kong, Chunzang saw a huge change in him. Of course, this change happened slowly and without arousing Chunzang's suspicions. He still faced these difficulties with the devil wand. When the devil wand did not work, he would still recite the sutra mantra and calmly face them. He was like an eminent demon race monk who had been baptized by Buddhist light. Although most of the Confucian cultivators were no match for Zhenjie, the Confucian cultivators' methods were endless. They were tens of thousands of times more powerful than the demon race. In the past 50 years, even someone as strong as Zhenjie had to suffer. He had to lie on dragon horse Zhenfeng's back every day and groaned in torment. Damn it, when will these days end? These were the grand events that people were familiar with. However, there were many undercurrents that were not known to the public. One of them was the Fortune Gate in the soaring Dragon Mountain Range in the Yu province. When the Confucian, Buddhist, and demon race were at their peak, the Taoist sect was also rapidly rising. Royal Highness Lan led hundreds of thousands of Taoist sect's troops to step into the 1,000 Demons sacred realm and annihilate a demon realm expert. After killing many greater demons, he crossed the northern and eastern seas and returned to the soaring Dragon Mountain Range in a high-profile manner. From then on, the Fortune Gate openly appeared in the hidden Immortal Continent and no longer feared anything. After the Immortal Palace's Lunar Temple's expedition to the soaring Dragon Mountain range was defeated, they did not send any more troops to annihilate the Fortune Gate. Maybe because 50 years was too short, the Immortal Palace did not have time to send troops, or maybe Immortal Emperor Gauchen had other plans. However, after the Fortune Gate's disciples cleared the mysterious Yellow List, the mysterious Yellow Order's experts began to surround the soaring Dragon Mountain range. However, the mysterious Yellow Order's encirclement was different from the Immortal Palace's. They did not organize a large-scale battle, but instead sent out hunting experts to kill the Fortune Gate's disciples. Naturally, the Fortune Gate was not to be outdone. They also sent out disciples to hunt down the mysterious Yellow Order's experts. There were many battles between the two sides, and both sides had their own victories and losses. In the end, the mysterious Yellow Order's experts were angered and sent out an 8th grade Origin Force literature saint to hunt down the Taoist sect's disciples. The first person to encounter this literature saint was Wang Bianfei. Even someone as strong as Wang Bianfei was almost killed by this literature saint. Wang Bianfei was shocked and fled into the soaring Dragon Mountain range with injuries. That literature saint did not give up. Not only did he attack the soaring Dragon Mountain range, but he also invited his close friends to attack the capital star formation. Moreover, he even arrogantly challenged Taoist Xiao. At this time, the soaring Dragon Mountain range was different from when Li Xiang and the others were at the Fortune Gate. Among the Fortune Gate's disciples, not only were there Taoist sect's experts at 7th grade Origin Force, but there were also formation masters. Under the protection of these disciples, the literature saints were not able to break through the formation. Just as the mysterious Yellow Order's experts were about to mobilize more Confucian disciples and plead with the Immortal Palace to send troops to annihilate the Fortune Gate, the mysterious Yellow Order's nightmare began. It was dusk, and a group of literature saints were about to join forces to attack the soaring Dragon Mountain range's grand defensive formation. Rumble. From the south of the soaring Dragon Mountain range, endless lightning bolts filled the sky, and when they reached the vicinity of the soaring Dragon Mountain range, it was like a heavenly river had suddenly burst out. Tens of thousands of lightning bolts fell like a lightning tribulation, surrounding the entire soaring Dragon Mountain range. The group of literature saints was shocked, and they thought that Xiaohua had returned. They desperately resisted and tried to escape. Unfortunately, the several thousand li radius of the soaring Dragon Mountain range was sealed by lightning. No matter how hard these literature saints struggled, they could not escape. Of the 40-plus literature saints with 8th grade Origin Force cultivation, 23 were killed by the lightning bolts, and the rest were seriously injured. As a 10,000 zhang tall lightning giant appeared in the sky, the surviving literature saints finally understood that the one who had returned was not Taoist Xiao, but the Lightning Taoist. Since the Lightning Taoist had returned, Wang Bianfei and the others led their troops to kill. Not only did they kill the remaining 20-plus literature saints, but they also killed the several 100,000 mysterious Yellow Order's subordinates who had besieged the soaring Dragon Mountain range. This battle dyed the soaring Dragon Mountain range red with blood. From then on, the mysterious Yellow Order's subordinates no longer dared to say anything about besieging the soaring Dragon Mountain range and exterminating the Fortune Gate's disciples. On the contrary, the Fortune Gate's disciples relied on the news from the Endless Merchant Union to launch counterattacks against the mysterious Yellow Order's subordinates. The 4 aristocratic families were all scholars, and seeing the Fortune Gate's strength, they wanted to deal with the Lightning Taoist. However, the Lightning Taoist was different from the Grand Mist ancestor. Not only was the Lightning Taoist's Grand Ascension Stage Origin Force cultivation at 9th grade Origin Force, but he also had several 100,000 high-grade disciples under him. None of the aristocratic families dared to say that they could win in a single battle. However, if the 100 schools of Confucian cultivators surrounded and defeated him, they would lack a commander. The Immortal Palace was raising the banner of the Immortal Master and taking back the advantage of the 100 schools of philosophers. Other than the 4 aristocratic families, no one else was qualified to put themselves under the Fortune Gate's tiger's mouth. As for the 4 aristocratic families, They seemed to know some secrets and were not too keen on exterminating the Fortune Gate. The Confucian cultivators were already like this, not to mention the immortals, Buddhists, and demons joining forces to exterminate the Fortune Gate. The Buddhist sect had Maitreya Buddha leading the exquisite temple. The demon race had the first great saint of the great sage temple. The literature palace had Wenxiu, who was regarded as the teacher of Confucian cultivators, and the dragon race had Taoist Yun, who was regarded as the dragon master and taught Dragon Island's small elder Ao Sheng. In this world, who had the qualifications, courage, and strength to exterminate the Fortune Gate in the soaring Dragon Mountain range? Who dared to compete with Xiao Hua and Xiao Hua? 50 years was a short time, not to mention there was no time in the Star Moon Palace. Inside the Star Moon Palace, on top of the pavilion, Xiao Hua and his doppelgangers were meditating with their eyes closed. No one knew about the drastic changes that had taken place in the 3 continents. However, in the end, a thunderous rumble could be heard. Children of gods, 81 rounds of discussion have come to an end. We shall meet again in the future if fate allows it. The Xianhong River was known as a mysterious river in the chaotic divine realm, and the gods could not know its profound meaning. We will lead the children of gods to travel the various worlds, observe space, experience Xianhong, sense time, discuss Tao and become wise, listen quietly and discern clearly. We hope that the children of gods can make progress after leaving, condense their godhead, obtain the godhood, and pry into the divine realm. Chapter 45-79. Rumble. Then, countless sounds turned into thunder, filling the entire Star Moon Palace. At this moment, Xiao Hua and his clones suddenly woke up. When they looked at the pavilion again, the stars, the moon, and the night sky were gone. All they could see was a primitive land. The 9 suns were burning fiercely, shining on the earth like flowing fire. Before Xiao Hua and the others could think of anything else, the 9 suns exploded with a loud bang. The flames mixed with lightning caused the entire world to collapse, and an unparalleled power once again enveloped the entire world. Under this power, the illusory realms shattered like bubbles, and the surviving humans and demons were revealed. Then this power dragged everything into the shattered space and flung them out. This is the power of the realm. Xiao Hua had returned to the 3 continents from the upper realm. Under this force, he immediately felt a sense of familiarity. He blurted out and exclaimed, "Could it be that this Star Moon Palace?" Just as he said this, Xiao Hua came to his senses. The thunder had clearly said that this was the place where Xianhong debate was held. This pavilion was floating on the Xianhong River, passing through various worlds. The Star Moon Palace was not the ancient ruin that fairy Xing Yu had imagined. As for what the Star Moon Palace was, it was not something that Xiao Hua could know at this moment. However, Xiao Hua knew that under the power of the realm he would be separated from his clones. What worried him the most was Reverend Yun. Without hesitation, he released his consciousness and shouted, "Fellow Taoists, quickly return to the space. Don't scatter to the 3 continents." Xiao Hua did not need to think too much. Reverend Yun was the first to notice the abnormality of the power of the realm. His body was moving in a different direction from Xiao Hua and the others. Reverend Yun was about to land in Xiao Hua's space. When he touched Xiao Hua's consciousness, his body flashed and his dragon body disappeared. Then Taoist sorcerer and the others also fell into the space. A series of shadows flashed as if they were teleporting, but also as if they were squeezing. A heavy pressure was generated in the surrounding space. Father. Within the light, little black and little yellows figures appeared. Although these shadows were either stretched into long strips or squashed flat, little yellow's voice still resounded in Xiao Hua's heart. Xiao Hua was overjoyed and hurriedly sent them into his space. After keeping the 2 little dragons, Xiao Hua saw Ao Xing, Ao Zhan, and the rest of the dragon race, but he did not try to keep them away. It was so much so that at the moment when the light figure was finally annihilated, Xiao Hua actually saw an unfamiliar face. This face was very imposing, and his temperament was even more graceful. A kind of aura of a leader uncontrollably flowed out from between his brows. Grand Mist Ancestor. Although Xiaohua had never seen the Grand Mist Ancestor's true face, he already knew that this person must be the Grand Mist Ancestor. The Grand Mist Ancestor also saw Xiaohua, and when his black and white eyes met Xiaohua's starry eyes, an indescribable lightning flashed in the light. At the same time when Xiaohua and the Grand Mist Ancestor met for the second time, in an unknown space, there was no light and no darkness. In a strange realm, there were two unknown existences in the silhouette of a colossal figure. One of them had a thunderous voice, and it was the same voice that had spoken at the beginning of the discussion. This voice asked, "Jing, this discussion seems to be a little inappropriate." "All right, Daddy knows that there is indeed something strange. The place where the dragon god of a certain dragon world is located, there is no trace of the dragon god. Instead, there is an extremely weak aura. Moreover," the thunderous voice interrupted Jing's words, and it laughed. "Presumably, the dragon god has lost the qualifications to participate in the discussion, and some lucky divine fetus has obtained good fortune." There were many such things in Xianhong's discourse. After all, the Xianhong River runs through countless realms, be it the chaos divine world, the primordial immortal world, or the mortal world. In this Xianhong discussion, the treasured boat is casually roaming along the Xianhong River. Who knows how much dust it has created and how many divine seeds have fallen? This is the fortune, this is the heavenly Tao, this is the divine relationship. This divine fetus seems to be different, but this disciple does not dare to break the rules and pry into the discussion seats. I do not dare to use my divine ability to travel through space. And don't worry about it. The thunderous voice replied, "Those who are fated to learn of it, those who are not are killed. This is the Tao of fate." Also, Jing hesitated again. "What's wrong?" The thunderous voice was displeased, and it asked urgently. "Disciple asks Master to punish me." Jing's voice became softer. "Oh, don't tell me." At this point, Lei Lei understood what was going on. He couldn't help but be furious. "Damn, why didn't you report the damage to the treasure ship? Since you didn't report it, why didn't you repair it earlier? Now the chi of the chaos divine world flows into the mortal world from the treasure ship. Do you know how many lives will be lost?" Disciple naturally did not know that the treasure ship was damaged, and the damage was too small. Disciple really did not know. It was only when Disciple noticed that there was something wrong with the dragon god's seat that I realized it. It was already too late to check. Alas. The thunderous voice heaved a long sigh and was about to speak, but suddenly he was stunned and laughed. "So that's it. The chi is actually like this. The heavenly Tao, oh heavenly Tao, is really unpredictable. Even with my ability, I almost forgot myself. If so, Jing, not only is she not at fault, she has done a meritorious deed." "Really, Master?" Na Jing was very happy. "Unfortunately, you have involved another karma. You are going to face the tribulation yourself." Master, if I have to face the tribulation, then so be it. Who is afraid of him? Don't say more. Go and repair the treasure ship." That thunderous voice said, "I don't know when Xuanhong's law discussion will be held again. Mortal things, I'm afraid that in the future, you won't have the chance to peek into the heavenly Tao." "Yes, Master," Jing said happily and left the indescribable space. As for the other existence, the huge silhouette did not move for a long time, as if it was thinking and also as if it was taking a nap. Xiaohua did not know what was happening outside the space. He saw the illusion overflowing, only to feel his body lighten, and the stars in front of him were even more brilliant. "This is..." Xiaohua stared blankly. Feeling the gentle caress of the night wind around him, he really felt as if he was in a dream. He let out a low groan. He really couldn't tell if this place was the Star Moon Palace or the Three Continents. Xiaohua was not in a hurry to release his divine sense. Instead, he closed his eyes and restrained all the senses in his body. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, he slowly released it. The night breeze was like a lover's whisper. The moonlight was mixed with the chirping of cicadas. The willow branches raised in the wind were like the charm of the night. Waves of frogs croaked in the distance, and the occasional dog barks decorated the night. Cough cough. The old man's cough, which had not been heard for a long time, added a human atmosphere to this tranquil night. Phew. Xiaohua was completely relieved. Then he took a deep breath. The fresh fragrance of the earth and the rich smell of the rice field made Xiaohua's heart feel at ease. I, Xiao, have returned to the 3 continents in the end. Rumble. Unfortunately, before he could finish sighing in relief, a burst of lightning and thunder came from the void. The indescribable power of law fell on Xiaohua like a fishing net, not giving him any chance to dodge at all. It fell into his body. At the same time, a faint heavy pressure fell on Xiaohua's Naiwen Palace, middle dantian, small dantian, and even his physical body. Moreover, the surrounding space also produced an indescribable rejection at the same time. It pounced on Xiaohua like a tide, making him feel extremely uncomfortable. Damn it. Xiaohua frowned. He hurriedly waved his hand and took out a palm-sized jade talisman. It was the coarse grass talisman that Su Ji had personally refined. Xiaohua urged his magic power. The coarse grass talisman emitted a very gentle brilliance. A mist-like restriction was released from the coarse grass talisman and slowly fell on top of Xiaohua's head. Shua. Xiaohua felt a kind of coolness fall from the top of his head and pass through his body. After being imprisoned by the power of law, some of the immortal spiritual energy that still conflicted with the space of the 3 continents disappeared. The previous heavy pressure and rejection completely disappeared. This coarse grass talisman is really useful. Xiaohua nodded. Senior Su refined a lot of them, but he didn't use them much. Now this Xiao has benefited from them. Xiaohua checked his body. There was no abnormality. Then he looked around again. Xiaohua's figure was originally standing in midair. After looking around, he saw that there were paddy fields all around him. His figure unconsciously descended, and his feet that had not been touched by dust for a long time stepped on the paddy field. Croak. A soft sound rang out. A toad actually jumped out from the ridge of the paddy field not far away and jumped into the paddy field. Xiaohua saw the scenery of the countryside and felt warmth in his heart. He squatted down very naturally and stretched out his hand to lift up the rice ears in the paddy field, carefully examining them. He saw that the rice ears were quite plump. Although the color was still a little green, the fragrance of the rice was already coming out from the grains. Xiaohua pinched one out from the rice ears and twisted it in his hand. Drip, drip. A few grains fell out. Xiaohua put these grains into his mouth and bit down with his white teeth. Green juice seeped out from the grains, and an astringent bitter fragrance seeped into Xiaohua's mouth. The mellow fragrance that he was more familiar with than spirit herbs or spirit wine immediately filled Xiaohua's heart. This year will definitely be a bumper harvest. Xiaohua's face revealed a smile. It was a smile that was even more satisfied than his harvest in the Star Moon Palace. Who is it? At this moment, the light of an oil lamp came from the ridge of the paddy field in the distance, and a slightly aged voice sounded. Xiaohua smiled and stood up from the ridge of the paddy field. He raised his voice and said, "Senior, I was passing by here. I saw that the rice in the field was growing very well, so I couldn't help but stop to take a look." Chapter 4580. Walking along the ridge of the field was an old farmer in his 60s. The old farmer wore a short shirt and held a pipe in his left hand and an oil lamp in his right. The old farmer's back was bent, but his footsteps were still hale and hearty. "Oh, so it's a young man." Seeing that Xiaohua was only in his 20s and was handsome with an indescribable temperament, the old farmer couldn't help but feel close to him. He smiled and asked, "It's already so late, why don't you hurry and find a place to stay? What's the use of looking at the rice in this field?" "Hee, this is your field, right?" Xiaohua smiled and said, "Congratulations, this year is another bumper harvest." When the old farmer heard this, he couldn't help but show a sense of pride. However, there was also a hint of bitterness in his pride. He said casually, "Sigh, it's nothing. I just collected 3 to 5 more bushels." 3 to 5 bushels? Xiaohua smiled and looked at the paddy field nearby. He said, I see that the paddy fields nearby are all growing well. How could it be that you only collected 3 to 5 bushels? Young man, you also know farm work? The old farmer was already close. He stopped and asked curiously, you have such soft skin and tender flesh, you should be a student. Xiaohua smiled and nodded. You're right, I am a student. However, I was born in a farmer's family and I have farmed since I was young. I know everything about farming. Xiaohua unconsciously raised his head and looked at the hazy starry sky in the distance. The memories that he had picked up before entering Xingyue Palace slowly flowed out. When the old farmer heard this, he sighed and said, I understand. You students have it the hardest. When you were young, you had to read books by oil lamps. When you grew up, you had to travel. After traveling, you had to leave your parents to continue your studies. Young man, you probably haven't been home for a long time, right? I won't hide it from you. Xiaohua nodded and said, it's been a long time. It's been so long that I can't even find my way home. When I think of this, I feel that I'm unfilial. It's all right. The old farmer smiled and said, although there's no road under your feet, you still miss home. You can't be considered unfilial. After all, young people had to go out and explore. If there was a chance in the future, they would go back and take a look. We don't want you to have any glory or wealth, nor do we want you to be promoted. As long as you are safe and sound, father and mother will be happy. The old farmer's words were really simple. In Xiaohua's ears, his words were even more useful than Su Ji's immortal profound. His eyes were already somewhat misty. Although cultivation allowed Xiaohua's divine abilities to reach the heavens, his heart, in the end, couldn't leave the ground. You must be tired, young man. Seeing that Xiaohua didn't speak, the old farmer pointed to a small shed in front of him and said, come with me to rest there. It's already late at night, and everyone in the village is resting. Why don't you stay with me for the night? There's still some porridge in my shed that my son delivered last night. I'm afraid it's still warm. Drink some to warm your stomach first. Xiaohua originally wanted to refuse. How could he have the time to dawdle with an old man from the countryside? However, he really didn't dare to disappoint the old farmer's hospitality. After pondering for a bit, he bowed and said, deference is no substitute for obedience. This young one thanks the elder's good intentions. Let's go. Don't haggle over words with me. If we talk for a bit longer, the elegant words I learned from others will all be gone. The old man smiled and wanted to raise his hand to pat Xiaohua's shoulder. However, looking at Xiaohua's bright clothes, he didn't dare to raise his hand. As he spoke, he led Xiaohua to a place in the field. At the end of the field, there was a small shed. Below the shed, there were 5 or 6 wooden pillars inserted into the field. A few feet away from the field, there were some wooden planks that were used to set up seats. In the other direction of the shed, there were also some fields. However, instead of rice, there were some faint green leaves. Those leaves rustled in the breeze like music. On the wooden planks of the shed, there were some bedding and some dried straw. Among the straw, there was a pitch-black jar that was about a foot in size. The jar wasn't tightly covered, and the smell of the bedding mixed with the fragrance of rice gushed out of the jar. Xiaohua couldn't help but frown. Elder. Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand and said, I still have some things to do. As soon as he saw Xiaohua frown, how could the old man not know what Xiaohua was thinking? He laughed loudly and said, young man, don't be anxious, don't be anxious. You scholars are all from the lower realm. How could I let you feel wronged and sleep on my bedding? As he spoke, the old man nimbly jumped onto the wooden planks and kicked the messy bedding to the edge of the field. He then fiddled with the dried straw a bit and took out some paper from one side of the shed. He smiled and said, the night isn't particularly cold. You can put up with it. This paper is enough to block the wind. Xiaohua smiled and still waved his hand and said, no need. Elder. The old man acted as if he didn't hear him. He touched the jar with his hand and was somewhat worried. He then looked at the other side of the straw shed. He seemed to be whispering but also seemed to be discussing with Xiaohua. This porridge isn't cold yet. There's no need to heat it up. However, I don't have any more bowls and chopsticks here. I have to go wash them. It's a pity that the melons in this field aren't ripe yet. Otherwise, eating a melon wouldn't be bad. I'll go wash the bowls and chopsticks. As he spoke, the old man took off the lid that covered the jar. It was a somewhat shabby porcelain bowl. He looked at the paddy field not far away and then looked further away. It seemed like he was thinking about where to wash it. It seemed like the paddy field was the place where the old man washed the porcelain bowl. However, the water in the paddy field was clearly somewhat dirty. He wanted to go to a place with a clean water source to clean it. Xiaohua originally wanted to stop him. However, he changed his mind and put down his raised hand. Meeting was fate. He didn't mind giving this honest old man or his family some opportunities. Young man, wait a moment. Sure enough, the old man said somewhat awkwardly, I'll go wash the bowls and chopsticks for you. Thank you, elder. Xiaohua smiled and nodded. Seeing that Xiaohua was no longer polite, the old man was also happy. Just as the old man was about to leave, Xiaohua suddenly frowned. He raised his eyes and looked at a corner of the night sky. It seemed like something had happened there. Damn it. Xiaohua suddenly cursed in a low voice. With a flick of his finger, several golden threads fell into the void and disappeared. Then Xiaohua said to the old man, Elder, there's no need to be so troublesome. When this young man passed by the village in front, he already ate some things. Right now, I'm not hungry. Moreover, this young man also brought some jujubes with him. Come, elder, you should also have a taste. As he spoke, Xiaohua reached into his bosom to take some jujubes. The old man laughed and immediately exposed Xiaohua's lie. Young man, don't try to deceive this old man. If you ate at Jiuzhou village at night, how could they let you out? No matter what, they would have to let you stay for a night. My Shao Empire's people have an unwritten rule. As long as they meet a wandering disaster victim, they must do their best to help, not to mention a traveling scholar like you. Shao Empire? Xiaohua was stunned and asked curiously, which Shao Empire? It's the Fiend God Blood Pool. Speaking up to hear, Xiaohua first laughed. This old man was a country bumpkin. How could he know about the Fiend God Blood Pool? Unexpectedly, the old man actually answered and said proudly, naturally, after the Fiend God Blood Pool disappeared, Taoist Shao spread the good seeds and created the Shao Empire. Young man, don't tell me you don't know Yan Province's most famous Shao Empire. Xiaohua sighed and replied, Elder, you don't know. Actually, this young man is lost and doesn't know where he is going. It's about the same as what this old man thought. If you didn't get lost, how could a scholar without the strength to trust a chicken walk alone at night? You should rest at this old man's place for a night. Tomorrow, I'll let my eldest child help you find a book boy. The old man laughed very honestly. Although he already had some doubts, he didn't say it until now. Obviously, he was protecting a scholar's self-esteem. Xiaohua's heart warmed. He hurriedly took out a handful of spirit dates from his bosom and said, Elder, you really don't need to wash the dishes. This young man met a senior a few days ago. He gave this young man some immortal dates. If you don't believe me, you can try it. Just eat one and you won't be hungry for a day. Fresh dates? How can there be any fresh dates at this time? Oh, immortal dates. The old man first thought that Xiaohua didn't want to trouble him, but then he realized. When the fragrance of the immortal dates floated over, he couldn't help but be startled. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, Young man, this kind of immortal item. You should carefully keep it. Don't take it out so easily. It will bring disaster. It's fine. Xiaohua smiled and said, This young man has always been careful. If it wasn't for Elder's concern for this young man wouldn't dare to take it out. As he spoke, Xiaohua walked to the front of the shed, stepped on the wooden plank, and sat down cross-legged. He raised his hand and said, Elder, come and try it. Okay. The old man didn't hold back and agreed. He stepped into the paddy field and washed the porcelain bowl and chopsticks that still had some rice grains in it. He then walked back with a smile. After putting away the bowl and chopsticks, the old man sat on the wooden plank of the shed. His feet that were dripping with mud dangled outside the plank. The old man sat down and carefully picked up a spirit date from Xiaohua's hand. He smelled it and gently bit a small crescent moon with his teeth. Then he chewed it a few times. The old man didn't bite much, so how could he chew it? However, the fragrance still filled his mouth and nose, and a warm current flowed into his throat. It really is an immortal item. The old man's eyes were filled with surprise. He carefully put the spirit date that he bit a bit into his bosom. Needless to say, the old man took the spirit date and naturally left it for his family. Xiaohua didn't ask him if it was for his wife, his children, or his grandchildren. He simply put all the dates in his hands on the wooden plank and said with a smile, "Elder, you can eat it yourself. There are still so many here. You can take them all." Chapter 4581. This. How can this be? The old man was a little embarrassed, but looking at the spirit jujubes, he couldn't bear to part with them and muttered, "You still have to eat them yourself." "It's all right." Xiaohua smiled. "This Xiaoxing's guards still have some. When Elder's eldest child sends this Xiaoxing back tomorrow, won't this Xiaoxing have something to eat? Then this old man won't be polite." The old man carefully hid the spirit jujubes in his clothes. There were more than 10 of them. In the end, the old man looked at the remaining 2 spirit jujubes on the wooden plank and gave them to Xiaohua. He said with some unease, "You should take these too. If you can't find your guards tomorrow." But Xiaohua didn't refuse and accepted the 2 spirit jujubes. He asked, "Elder, this Xiaoxing has actually heard of the Xiao country. Although this time I didn't come to the Xiao country specifically to travel, I still had the intention to take a look. After all, this is a paradise opened by a Dao sect cultivator. In this Xiaoxing's eyes, this is inconceivable. Elder, can you tell this Xiao country to this Xiaoxing first?" The old man nodded and took out the tobacco from his waist. As he stuffed tobacco into the tobacco, he said, "Actually, this old man's original home wasn't here." Xiaohua sat cross-legged in the straw hut with a smile on his face as he listened to the old man's story. He then released his divine sense to check the Xiao country situation. It wouldn't have mattered if he didn't look, but when he looked, Xiaohua's brows furrowed slightly. But it was only a moment before Xiaohua smiled again. Because in his divine sense, not only did he see something he didn't like, he also saw Ao Xing, Xiong Yi, and more than 10 Fortune Gate disciples. Xiaohua used a divine ability to give a few instructions, then withdrew his divine sense and focused on listening to the old man's story. What the old man said at the beginning was similar to what Xiaohua knew, but in the end, Xiaohua was a little surprised. Because according to what the old man had said, the current Xiao Empire didn't have any Taoist Empire or Confucian Empire. However, at the borders of the Xiao Empire, there were many small Taoist empires that had sprung up. These Taoist empires were constantly encroaching on the borders of the Xiao Empire. In the past 40 years, many lands had already been incorporated into these Taoist empires. The farmers who were originally farming on these lands were either incorporated into the Taoist empires or forced to search for land in the Xiao Empire. Of course, there were even some who lost their homes again. The Xiaohua. Xiaohua sneered and thought to himself, there are only 2 origins of this Dao sects. One is the Grand Mist ancestors' subordinates. They want to get a share of the Xiao country. However, these Dao sects are only a small part. The majority of them have other origins. They must be the disciples of the 100 schools of thought. They don't dare to openly defy the 4 great families. It's the orders of the sage of literature from the other families. Instead, they support some puppet Dao sects to do shady business. Sigh. In the end, the old man sighed. He looked into the distance and said, "The border of the Mo Wu country is only a few hundred li away from our village. Perhaps, it won't be long before our village is occupied by the Mo Wu country. I heard that the king of the Mo Wu country is very domineering. Anyone who joins the Mo Wu country has to pay a heavy tax. Previously, there were many people who voluntarily joined the Mo Wu country, but now they are regretting it. Some of them escaped. However, the land in the Xiao country already belongs to someone. When they return, it's inevitable that there will be some fighting. A few days ago, there was even a fight." "Old sir." Xiaohua nodded. He pointed at the place where his divine sense had swept and asked, "Previously, when this Xiaoxing came from there, I saw many people flying in the sky. They used spells to throw some huge rocks and soil into the paddy field. Is this the Amo Wu country's way of seizing land? What a sin! When the old man heard this, he couldn't help but reveal a regretful expression. He said, the paddy field that was planted for half a year was destroyed just like that. How could they care about the lives of us farmers? Even if they want to occupy the land, they don't have to destroy the farmland. The rice that was about to be harvested was all gone in an instant. After saying this, the old man said, young man, you're right. This is just one of their methods of seizing land. If they destroy the farmland, we farmers will no longer be able to cultivate. Naturally, we will have to go elsewhere. Wouldn't this land be barren? They will naturally take it back. Is there any other way? Xiaohua looked interested. However, his eyes had long since narrowed, looking a little angry. This is nothing. The old man bitterly smiled. There's something even more outrageous. Elder, to tell me. Let this Xiao Sheng broaden his horizons. Xiaohua asked. I heard that sometimes, they will take advantage of the night when the villagers are asleep and use their magic to make a village's thatched cottage disappear. When the villagers wake up, they have no home. These villagers can only take the initiative to leave. The old man thought for a moment and said, also, if there are still people who don't leave, they will turn the village into a lot of snakes, rats, and even ferocious beasts. They will bite the villagers to death or scare them away. Damn it! Xiaohua couldn't help but curse. Also, the old man said again, if this doesn't work, they will turn the surroundings of the village into cliffs, making it impossible for the villagers to leave. They will starve to death. I got it. Xiaohua stood up. His face was a little gloomy. He said, good will be rewarded, evil will be repaid. It's not that there won't be any retribution. Now that the time has come, good and evil will be repaid. Junior, what do you want to do? The old man hurriedly stood up in fright. He pulled Xiaohua and said, you are just a scholar who doesn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. Don't let your emotions affect your decisions. Don't worry, elder. Xiaohua smiled and patted the back of the old man's rough hand. He said, previously, it was this Xiao who didn't think it through. This Xiao's ability is limited. Moreover, this Xiao's development has indeed exceeded this Xiao's expectations. Now, this Xiao has the ability to protect all of you. All of you can peacefully live and work here. As he spoke, Xiaohua's figure slowly flew up into the air. Bursts of lightning appeared around his body. As the thunder rumbled, the entire horizon was illuminated by golden light. Xiao country is Taoist Zhao's Xiao country. It is also the Xiao country of a group of displaced commoners. No matter if it is the human race or the demon race, if they can peacefully live in my Xiao country, this Xiao will welcome them. However, if there are people who have ulterior motives and rely on their divine ability to bully the commoners, then they are going against this Xiao and making things difficult for this Xiao. I am Taoist Xiao. Today I give the order. Evil. Evil will be repaid. Whoever dares to have any ideas about my Xiao country, tonight, will pay back tenfold. Xiaohua used his divine ability. Every word and sentence was like thunder in the Xiao country. Whether it was the commoners, Confucian cultivators, or Taoist sects, they were all awakened. Taoist Xiao, Taoist Xiao? The old man in the straw hut seemed to have awakened from a dream. He couldn't help but fall to the ground and say with his head, Taoist Xiao, the savior, you have finally come. Then he was even more surprised. He jumped up and rushed to the village as if he had gone mad. He shouted, I see Taoist Xiao, I see Taoist Xiao. Xiaohua saw lights appear on the ground, like hearts that were awakening. He took out the Kunlun mirror. With a shake, tens of thousands of Shenhua continent's disciples flew out. Xiaohua's divine sense swept out and pulled Ao Sheng and Xiong Yi, who were flying in the distance, over. Xiaohua shouted sternly, where is Xiong Yi? Disciple is here. Xiong Yi hurriedly bowed. Master's previous instructions, have you investigated clearly? Xiaohua asked. Yes, Master knows. Xiong Yi replied, Disciple has captured more than a dozen cultivators who were doing evil in the night. I have already found out a lot of information. These disciples are under your command. Xiaohua raised his hand and pointed at the army of tigers and wolves. He ordered, I'll give you 1 day's time to destroy all the countries around the Shao country. Capture those evil monarchs back to the soaring Dragon Mountain range and interrogate them. You must find the mastermind behind the scenes and eliminate all evil. Yes, disciple accepts the order. Xiong Yi complied and led the tens of thousands of Fortune Gate disciples away. Master Xiao. Seeing that the Fortune Gate disciples had left, Ao Xing respectfully asked, Do you need disciple to do anything for Master Xiao? No need. Xiaohua looked at Ao Xing and asked, What did you gain from the Star Moon Palace? The Star Moon Palace is wonderful beyond words. Ao Xing couldn't help but smile when he heard this. He hurriedly replied, Disciple has gained a lot. All right, there's no need to go into details. Xiaohua raised his hand to stop Ao Xing from continuing. The Kunlun mirror in his hand vibrated, and a light beam overflowed. He said, This is just the beginning of your cultivation. The real test is coming next. Yes, disciple understands. Ao Xing nodded with anticipation in his eyes. When the light beam from the Kunlun mirror swept across, Xiaohua kept it into the space and asked Reverend Yun to give Ao Xing a small part of the dragon crystal from the Supreme Dragon God, as well as some useful things that the Dragon Clan had obtained from the Star Moon Palace. After arranging Ao Xing's matters, Xiaohua's consciousness entered the space again and carefully sent the items left behind by the heaven-devouring beast and Di Ting into Blackie and Goldie's bodies. As expected, when the two divine beasts' soul essences entered their bodies, the two little fellows couldn't fully accept it. Not to mention that their bodies were fluctuating in and out of the space, even their brains were emitting chaotic energy waves that roared and rushed out in all directions. Activating his divine ability, Xiaohua constantly paid attention to the two little fellows' changes, smoothing out any uncontrollable changes. After a full hour, the two little fellows finally calmed down and fell into a deep sleep. One of them was a black heaven-devouring beast's shadow that shrouded Blackie, while the other was a yellow Di Ting's shadow that covered Goldie. Both shadows emitted different rhythms of energy waves that slowly converged into the two little fellows' bodies. Give it a tip, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 4582. Xiaohua waited for a while longer. Seeing that the two little ones were no longer moving, he sealed the two different spaces and left. Phew. Xiaohua looked at the fields and let out a long sigh. A smile appeared on his face as he thought to himself, although I don't know how little yellow and little black absorb the soul essence, and the way they absorb the soul essence is different, Shenhong said clearly that the soul essence is the most mysterious thing in the world. Any existence that can be passed down through the soul essence has unlimited potential. When the two little ones awaken, it will be the time when the heaven-devouring beast and Di Ting reappear in the world. After dealing with Ao Sheng and the two little ones, Xiaohua's figure was now in the air. He looked down at the boundless paddy fields, villages, and people with a smile in his eyes. All those years ago, when he sowed seeds in the Fiend God Blood Swamp, it was only a spur-of-the-moment idea, and he couldn't bear to let the swamp become desolate. However, he'd never imagined that in just a little over 200 years, the Fiend God Blood Swamp that caused one's expression to turn pale just now had already become a paradise that protected an extremely large number of refugees. Now, in Xiaohua's eyes, this magnificent scene was far more impactful than what he had heard before. However, there was no paradise in this world that didn't need strength to support it, and there was no paradise that wasn't coveted by others. In just 50 years, the Shao Empire that no one dared to probe before was now being probed by the Devil's Claws, even though Xiaohua, who founded the Shao Empire, was already a Mahayana stage human. Previously, when this Shao was not strong enough, these literary sages might have felt that this Shao wasn't a threat and only admired me. But now that this Xiao's strength has surpassed theirs, their mentality has changed? Xiaohua pinched his chin and thought to himself, or perhaps they are busy with other things and have put the Shao Empire's matter to the back of their minds. Although this Shao is already a Mahayana stage human, after returning to the 3 continents, I only made a thunderous strike in the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm and then disappeared without a trace. I didn't express my attitude towards the Shao Empire's matter, so this caused those ambitious Confucian cultivators and Taoist cultivators to have ideas? Yes, this Shao has to ask Xiong Yi and the others for their opinions. I don't want to let a good thing that is beneficial to the people end up in an unsightly state. That it was also at this time that dawn broke in the east. A ray of sunlight crossed the horizon, wiping away the remaining darkness between heaven and earth, rapidly enveloping the entire earth. A new day had arrived. Xiao Hua habitually opened his mouth and a bit of sun essence fell into his mouth. Before he could swallow it, the crystal-like godhead hidden in Xiao Hua's brain slightly trembled again. Countless power of faith gushed out from all over the hidden immortal continent and fell into the godhead, turning into faint crystal threads. Looking at the ground again, in the village, countless villagers, old and young, rushed out of their houses and stood on the ground. Under the effect of the crystal godhead, the entire Shao country, and even outside of the Shao country, hundreds of thousands of miles away, no matter the distance, even the mortals, could clearly see Xiao Hua's appearance. Billions of people who were regarded as ants by cultivators, all knelt on the ground in the morning light. Without any rhythm or command, everyone kowtowed from the bottom of their hearts. Greetings, Spiritual Master Xiao. Thank you, Spiritual Master Xiao, for saving our lives. Swoosh. Xiao Hua's eyes became blurry all of a sudden. His silent tears couldn't help but fall down. What he did was merely an unintentional action. Yet, in the eyes of these ordinary people, this unintentional action was even more important than the heavens. They couldn't help but place all their hopes on him. This kind of faith was not only a kind of opportunity, it was also a kind of heavy hope. Seeing them, Xiao Hua couldn't help but think of his own parents. He didn't know whether it was him who saved these villagers or these villagers who helped him. Xiao Hua had a lot of problems. His heart was soft, his ears were soft, he was indecisive, and sometimes he was even a little fussy. He liked to be a good person, but he had an advantage that others didn't often have, and that was gratitude. Even if he was an ant in the eyes of cultivators, as long as Xiao Hua had the slightest kindness, he would repay it with gusto. If it was someone else, seeing billions of villagers kneeling and kowtowing, they wouldn't be able to help but be high-spirited and full of vigor. But Xiao Hua's first thought was whether he was worthy of these villagers' worship, and whether he could do something for the villagers' faith to repay the benefits brought to him by their faith. Xiao Hua took a deep breath and raised his hand. Without using any magic power, he lifted the billions of villagers. Xiao Hua's voice reverberated within several thousand li radius, as if it was ringing in the villagers' hearts. Everyone, please rise. This Xiao was born in a farmer's family. Although this Xiao has cultivated for a long time, seeing you is like seeing this Xiao's parents, like seeing this Xiao's family. There are many goals in cultivation, either to defy the heavens with one's own strength, or to seek immortality by following the heavens. But this Xiao has always thought that these goals are too lofty. This Xiao's goal in cultivation is to live a peaceful life, and to use my strength to protect the world's people when they are in trouble. Since everyone believes in this Xiao and worships this Xiao, then this Xiao also swears that this Xiao will not let you down in this life, and my fortune gate will also not dare to let you down. Lightning rumbled within 10,000 li radius, and images of heavenly dragons, flying phoenixes, chilants, and other illusory images appeared. Thousands of auspicious signs rushed out from the void, covering the entire Shao country. While everyone was still in shock, the lightning gathered and condensed into a lightning bolt as thick as a child's arm, striking straight down from the sky. Taoist Xiao. Everyone turned pale with fright, and their hearts trembled. The lightning bolt landed on Xiao Hua's forehead, and a dreamlike landscape atlas appeared under the lightning bolt. It then entered Xiao Hua's body and rushed into the crystal-like godhead. Then a kind of peace, a kind of tranquility, and a kind of absolute trust fell into the crystal threads connected to the godhead, transcending time and space, and filled the hearts of millions of villagers. Feeling the same as Xiao Hua, millions of villagers had tears streaming down their faces. Whether they were young or old, that kind of gratitude and Xiao Hua's appearance were deeply engraved in their hearts. At this time, Xiong Yi's voice sounded, Disciple has already captured all the Shao country's rulers and royal family's disciples. So fast? Xiao Hua was a little dazed. It had only been half a day. Xiong Yi reported meticulously, "Good, Master knows that there are 21 Taoist countries near the Shao country, 10 Confucian countries, and 3 Buddhist countries. Among them, 2 Buddhist countries and 1 Confucian country did not encroach on the Shao country's territory. The remaining 30 countries are nothing but ants in front of our Fortune Gate's army. Wherever our army passes, they crumble. There is no decent resistance." "Good, you lead the way. We will return to the soaring Dragon Mountain range," Xiao Hua ordered and took out the Pegasus from his space. The Pegasus stretched its neck and neighed, and with a flap of its wings, it rushed towards the soaring Dragon Mountain range. Respectfully sending off Taoist Xiao. Millions of villagers couldn't help but cry and kneel down. They really hoped that Taoist Xiao would be with them and protect them for the rest of their lives, as well as their descendants. However, they were clear that while they were busy all year round, working hard for their own livelihood, Taoist Xiao also had to cultivate. It was best for him to be himself. It was a bright afternoon in the Fortune Dao Palace. Xiao Hua's chair was empty as usual, and there were 4 chairs placed in front of it. At this time, 2 of the chairs were occupied by Prince Lan and Li Xiang, while the other 2 chairs were empty. Below the high platform, there were some Golden Core disciples and Foundation Establishment disciples. Most of these disciples stood beside Li Xiang. On Lan Lan's side, other than a few Golden Core disciples, there were also a few spirit-severing disciples. These disciples didn't have any arrogance on their faces, nor did they show any special respect. As for the Thunderbolt Immortal, Fu Jiwen, and the other inner disciples, they weren't in the Fortune Gate Palace. At this time, Lan Lan's cultivation had already surpassed Li Xiang's, approaching the late nascent soul stage. His gaze swept across the entire Fortune Gate Palace, and he said, "Senior brother Li, I have something to discuss with you today." Lan Lan's words carried a hint of discussion, but his gaze only lingered on Li Xiang for a moment before he looked outside the hall. There was a kind of authority and confidence in his voice. "Hi, junior brother." Li Xiang laughed. "What is it?" "Junior brother has already far surpassed me in handling the sex affairs. Junior brother can make all the decisions, and I will only be the advisor." Just as Royal Highness Lan was about to speak, his gaze swept past the spirit-severing disciples beside him, and his tone changed as he sighed. Sigh. "When senior brother mentioned planning, junior brother can easily recall the time when you, me, Xiong Yi, and junior brother Chang Yu racked our brains on how to develop the Fortune Gate. Sometimes, we even quarreled over some differences of opinion. Although it was difficult at that time, looking back, it was true happiness. Now, junior brother Chang Yu is gone, and it's impossible for us to return to that time." Hearing Lan Lan mention Chang Yu, Li Xiang's expression changed, and he sighed deeply. He looked at the disciples below the stage and said, "Yes, at that time, the 4 of us worked together to develop the Fortune Gate under the pressure of Confucian cultivators. We were afraid that we would fail to live up to Master's expectations. Now that I think about it, the changes in the past few decades are bigger than the changes in the past 200 years. It's not just big. It's simply earth-shattering." His Highness Lan said proudly, "Master is a miracle, and in his hands, our Fortune Gate is also a miracle. Although the 3 continents are big, which Taoist force can compare to our Fortune Gate?" Chapter 4584. Li Xiang hesitated for a moment before reminding, "Junior brother, the Grand Mist Ancestor, is an extremely powerful figure. He was the strongest person in the Taoist Gate in the past, and he was only defeated by the combined forces of the Confucian, Buddhist, and demon sects." Senior brother Li. Lan chuckled. "It's good that you're so careful. However, if you had seen Master's majestic appearance in the 1,000 demonic sacred grounds, and if you had seen my Fortune Gate's hundreds of thousands of soldiers flying across the 1,000 demonic sacred grounds, all the demonic beast clans would give way to them. You wouldn't be so cautious anymore. Moreover, Marshal Uncle Lei Ting is guarding the soaring Dragon Mountain range. He's also a human Grand Ascension Stage cultivator, and his methods aren't any weaker than Master's. That day, he was enraged and killed more than 10 Confucian saints. Huh, even if it's the Grand Mist Ancestor, does he have such methods? All right. Li Xiang nodded and replied, we're finally at the end of our suffering. This victory was obtained by sacrificing the lives of the Fortune Gate's disciples, so we must cherish it. Of course, Lan Huan said disapprovingly, how could Junior Brother not know? Oh, I wonder what Junior Brother wanted to discuss just now? Li Xiang pulled Lan Huan back to the topic and asked, why don't you tell me and I'll give you some advice? Oh, it's like this. Lan Huan chuckled. A few days ago, Taoist Master Qing Su sent an envoy over to discuss the division of forces in the 9 prefectures. Li Xiang frowned when he heard Huang Xiaolong's words. Junior Brother, since Master has already agreed to join forces with the Grand Mist Ancestor, you should do as Master says. But now, Fu Jiwen, Yu Zhongquan, Xian Songzi, and the other senior brothers have returned. Although they won't interfere with the Fortune Gate's affairs, I feel that it's better to discuss with them. After all, the division of forces in the 9 prefectures is too sensitive and important. Oh, if possible, it's best to ask Martial Uncle Lei Ting. Sigh, Senior Brother Li. Helplessness appeared on Prince Lan's face, but there was also a trace of pride in his helplessness. Martial Uncle Lei Ting, Fu Jiwen, and the other senior brothers don't care about the affairs of the sect. They have already said that as long as you and I discuss it, they will agree. Li Xiang hesitated for a moment before persuading Huang Xiaolong. Junior Brother, Elder Brother has something that I've always wanted to tell Junior Brother. Since we're talking about cooperating with the Grand Mist Ancestor, Elder Brother has to remind Junior Brother. We don't know the Grand Mist Ancestor's strength, but our Fortune Gate strength has been seen through by Taoist Qing Su and Venerable Lord Heaven Flipping Master. If they are sincere, why haven't they revealed their strength to us? This kind of cooperation didn't seem too appropriate. Moreover, the hidden immortal mainland is the world of Confucian cultivators. Although our Fortune Gate strength is at its peak, compared to the 100 schools of Confucian cultivators, we are still lacking. The main reason why the Confucian cultivators haven't besieged our soaring Dragon Mountain range is because they don't want to be the first sacrifice. However, if our Fortune Gate and the Grand Mist Ancestors' plan is too big and cross their bottom line, we will provoke the Confucian, Buddhist, and demon race to join forces again. It won't just be a disaster for our Fortune Gate, it will also bring disaster to Master. Therefore, Elder Brother thinks that Master has gone to the Star Moon Palace, right? Let's wait for him to return from the Star Moon Palace before we decide. It's better. What Senior Brother thinks is also what Junior Brother thinks. Prince Lan smiled and said, previously, Junior Brother asked Taoist Qing Su, and Taoist Qing Su didn't hide anything from him. He even told Junior Brother about the situation of the Tao Gate seniors who escaped from the Penglai Immortal region. However, he isn't the Grand Mist Ancestor, so he doesn't know everything. But if you want the Grand Mist Ancestor to announce their forces, only Master and Martial Uncle Lei Ting have the qualifications to do so. Junior Brother, you are representing our Fortune Gate and Master. Since the Grand Mist Ancestor isn't willing to reveal anything to you, it means that he doesn't have any sincerity. There's no point in doing this kind of unequal cooperation. Junior Brother understands. However, it's rare for our Tao Gate to be in such a good situation. Junior Brother has to do something for Master and the Tao Gate. While Junior Brother is arguing for what's right, I also want to take advantage of the fact that the Confucian sect hasn't gone all out to deal with our Tao Gate. I want to set up a trap and move away all the chess pieces that should be moved. This will build a good foundation for Master to take over in the future. Li Xiang heard Prince Lan's righteous words and could only nod his head and say, then, Junior Brother, please tell me about the plan you discussed with Taoist Qing Su. Prince Lan began to speak frankly and frankly. The more Li Xiang listened, the more his face changed. A feeling of fear and trepidation rose in his heart. Before Prince Lan could finish, Li Xiang hurriedly waved his hand and said, Junior Brother, this matter is too important. We can't make a decision. I feel that we have to explain this matter to Martial Uncle Lei Ting. If we don't have the confidence to control this plan, then our fortune gate will be used as a tool. Prince Lan raised his eyebrows and laughed. Of course our fortune gate has the ability to control. That iron army of hundreds of thousands is rare in this world. Which Confucian sect family dares to go against our fortune gate? Junior brother, is there anything else? Li Xiang saw that Prince Lan was in high spirits and knew that it wasn't easy to persuade him. He changed the topic and said, let's discuss other things first. Let's senior brother think about this matter. Alright. His Highness Lan helplessly agreed. He was somewhat resentful of this unambitious senior brother of his. However, when he thought about how Li Xiang couldn't even manage the small Taoist kingdom well back then, he could only blame his bad luck for not being able to do something earth-shattering before Xiaohua returned to the soaring Dragon Mountain range. The second matter is about the disciple recruitment. His Highness Lan's tone had lost its fervor, and his interest waned as he said, although the mysterious yellow token has stopped attacking our soaring Dragon Mountain range, little brother feels that there will still be mysterious yellow tokens in the Yu province and the other 8 provinces. This is very disadvantageous for our fortune gates recruitment. Junior brother wants senior brother Yu Fong to bring some low-level disciples to other parts of the hidden immortal mainland to recruit disciples. Li Xiang didn't think much of it and nodded. Recruiting disciples has always been our fortune gate's #1 priority. Senior brother Yu Fong will also bring Qin Xiaoyao and the other disciples. After all, senior brother Yu Fong is not familiar with the hidden immortal mainland. Qin Xiaoyao and the other disciples have more experience. Oh, junior brother has already told senior brother Yu Fong about this. This year, Qin Xiaoyao and the other disciples will not be allowed to leave the mountain for the time being. Prince Lan smiled and said, after all, the outside world is much more dangerous than before. Li Xiang was stunned for a moment, and he raised his head to look at Yu Fong, who was neither arrogant nor humble. A bitter smile appeared on his face. Yu Fong was a spirit-severing disciple, and he had followed Prince Lan back from the Thousand Demons' sacred grounds. Normally, Yu Fong and the other disciples would be guarding the Fortune Dao Palace and listen to Prince Lan's and Li Xiang's orders. But in reality, Yu Fong and the other disciples only listened to Prince Lan's orders and turned a deaf ear to Li Xiang's orders. Therefore, Prince Lan used Yu Fong as an excuse, and Li Xiang couldn't do anything about it. Although Li Xiang had a trace of suspicion in his heart, and felt that Prince Lan was taking advantage of the disciple recruitment to expand his strength, he didn't have any evidence against him, and he didn't want to think in that direction. Alright, since junior brother has already made up his mind, then we'll do as junior brother says. Li Xiang smiled. We're all working hard for the development of the Fortune Dao Palace. Senior brother is willing to support you unconditionally. Chapter 4585. Xiaohua had no choice but to follow the Thunderclap Immortal into the space and take out the thing he had obtained earlier. As expected, the Thunderclap Immortal's eyes lit up when he saw the bamboo joint that condensed the long river. He raised his hand almost without hesitation and took the bamboo joint in his hand. After he released his spirit sense, he looked at it carefully for a while and said with a smile, "There is a long river sealed in this thing. The aura of this long river is not from an ordinary realm. If I'm not mistaken, it has something to do with the wisp of purple gas that I obtained earlier. I will refine this bamboo joint and the aura of the long river will be integrated into my body. It will be similar to the effect of fellow Taoist taking the clear feather pill." Ha! Many thanks, fellow Taoist. The Thunderbolt Immortal spat out lightning from his mouth and swallowed the bamboo joint. A clear stream gushed out from the top of the Thunderbolt Immortal's head like a fountain. It then turned around and fell down. As the clear stream flickered, an indescribable fluctuation merged with the Thunderbolt Immortal's body. "I's going to meditate." The Thunderbolt Immortal's face lit up as he said, "In these 50 years, I have put in a lot of effort. It's time for I to rest." The Thunderbolt Immortal sat down cross-legged in the space and started refining the bamboo joint with all his might. Fellow Taoist has worked hard." Xiaohua cupped his fist and said, "Leave the rest to I." Xiaohua thought of something and asked, "How is His Highness Lan doing these days?" The Thunderbolt Immortal naturally didn't answer Xiao Hua's question. He passed the information he knew to Xiao Hua and ignored him. Xiao Hua's face turned gloomy when he received the Thunderbolt Immortal's information. If he didn't know His Highness Lan's thoughts, he might have thought that His Highness Lan was selfish and wanted to expand his strength. However, if he knew His Highness Lan's thoughts, then His Highness Lan's actions were really thought-provoking. Alright. Xiao Hua instantly thought of the scene when he had seen the Grand Mist Ancestor in the illusion when he had left the Star Moon Palace. A sharp glint flashed across his eyes and he said coldly, "People often say that a mountain cannot hold two tigers. This Xiao believed it before, but now, I'm afraid it's true. Since it's like this, Grand Mist Ancestor, bring it on. This Xiao doesn't mind playing with you. Who doesn't know how to cast a long line to catch a big fish?" Now that he had a plan, Xiao Hua unleashed his powerful Mahayana stage aura, and the entire sky began to churn. Several huge tornadoes gathered in the sky like holes, stirring up the originally clear sky. Bursts of thunderous rumbles spread out in all directions as Xiao Hua flew toward the soaring Dragon Mountain range and the Yu province faster than the wind. There was no need to wait for the soaring Dragon Mountain range. Boom boom boom. Several hundred thunderous booms resounded from the soaring Dragon Mountain range. Countless lightning bolts shot up into the sky, shaking the earth. Two giant lightning bolts, several 100,000 Fortune Gate's Iron Army, and millions of Fortune Gate's low-level disciples emerged from the soaring Dragon Mountain range to welcome them. They spread out over 1,000 li in the sky. Xiao Hua usually didn't like etiquette, but seeing his own disciples' imposing manner, he was also happy in his heart. How could he blame him? His figure blurred, and he teleported in front of everyone. Before he could say anything, Fu Jiwen and the other disciples led them to kneel on the ground and shouted, "Disciples respectfully welcome Taoist back to the sect." "Good, you've all worked hard." Xiao Hua's eyes flashed like lightning as he looked around. Even though all the disciples were kneeling, they could clearly feel Xiao Hua's gaze on them. They couldn't help but feel excited, and they couldn't help but reply, "Disciples didn't work hard. And wait here, and follow this old man back to the Fortune Dao Palace. This old man will reward you according to your contributions." Xiao Hua smiled as he raised his hand. He didn't use any divine ability. None of the disciples dared to disobey. They stood up and replied in unison, "Disciples obey, thank you Taoist." As Xiao Hua flew up, Fu Jiwen and the other disciples of the Fortune Gate, as well as the disciples of the soaring Dragon Mountain range led by Li Xiang and Fu Jiwen, returned to the Fortune Dao Palace in an orderly manner. They arranged themselves neatly around the Fortune Dao Palace and formed a capital star formation to protect Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua sat on the jade chair on the high platform and raised his hand to pat the top of his head. Rumble. Tens of thousands of lightning bolts poured out from the top of his head, shooting into the sky. The roof of the Fortune Dao Palace and the capital star formation of the soaring Dragon Mountain range couldn't stop it. These lightning bolts condensed into a huge storm in the sky. Not only did it shine brightly, but it also pierced through the clouds. The sound of thunder that could vanquish all evil even enveloped the sky for tens of thousands of li. The lightning storm spewed out from the top of Xiao Hua's head, and after it flowed in the sky, it slowly entered Xiao Hua's body. It flowed endlessly, and Xiao Hua's voice resounded in the lightning storm. "Xian Song Zi, Taoist Jing Ting, Wang Baifei, Yu Zhongquan, and Chang Yuan, listen up. Disciple is here." The five of them didn't dare to delay, and they hurriedly stepped out and bowed respectfully. "Each of you will lead 50,000 Fortune Gate disciples and split into 4 directions. Head to the 3 continents to welcome the Fortune Gate disciples coming out from the Star Moon Palace. There are 8,111 Golden Core Realm disciples and 3,607 Foundation Establishment Realm disciples participating in the Star Moon Palace's training. Not a single one of them can be missing. Whoever dares to harm my Fortune Gate disciples will be killed." "Yes, disciple understands." Xian Song Zi and the others immediately stood up and led the 200,000 disciples out of the soaring Dragon Mountain range, heading to the 3 continents' 4 directions. It wasn't just Xian Song Zi and the others. Even the other disciples who had flown far away turned their heads to look at the clouds. Thunderous roars could be heard, and thousands of strange phenomena appeared amidst the wind and thunder. An unparalleled sense of pride rose from the bottom of their hearts. The human race's Mahayana realm, the supreme cultivator of the 3 continents, should have such an imposing manner. 200,000 disciples accepted the order and left. The soaring Dragon Mountain range became somewhat empty. Xiaohua looked all around for a moment and his gaze fell on Li Xiang and His Highness Lan. Li Xiang didn't expect Xiaohua to return with such a valiant aura. He was so excited that his face became somewhat red. Li Xiang, Prince Lan. Xiaohua smiled and said, "The 2 of you have worked hard. Tell me about the situation in the past 200 years, and let Fu Jiwen and the others learn from you." Disciple doesn't dare to claim credit. Li Xiang and Prince Lan were startled, and hurriedly stepped out from the ranks. This is what disciples should do. What the soaring Dragon Mountain range was like in the past, and what it is like now, this old man knows better than the 2 of you. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "Tell me how the fortune gate has developed in the past few years." "Yes, master." Hearing this, His Highness Lan agreed and began to tell Xiongyi everything that happened after Xiaohua left. Although His Highness Lan's story was no different from Xiongyi's, for some reason, perhaps because of Xiaohua's suspicion, Xiaohua always felt that His Highness Lan wanted to take all the credit for himself. Without waiting for Prince Lan to finish, Xiaohua sighed in his heart. First impressions are the strongest. Really amazing, ah. After Prince Lan finished speaking, Li Xiang added a few more words. Finally, Li Xiang took out a jade eye from his bosom and respectfully handed it over to Xiongyi. This disciple knows that master will be back soon. This is the list that this disciple and junior brother Lan recently made. Inside it are the rewards for the inner sect disciples that the 2 of us have discussed. Originally, we should wait for junior brother Xiongyi to return before the 3 of us take a look. Since master has returned first, please take a look and decide how to reward us. Prince Lan blanked for a second, then smiled and said, "This is something that disciple casually mentioned a few years ago." Disciple didn't expect senior brother Li to make such a detailed list. Disciple has slacked a little. Everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses, there is no need to be arrogant or inferior. Being able to work together to handle the Fortune Gate's affairs so well is not easy. Xiaohua took the jade eye pendant and casually glanced at it. He then passed it to Prince Lan and said, "I'll leave this matter to you. Reward each disciple according to what is written in the jade eye pendant. Don't disappoint them." When Highness Lan saw this, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. Rewarding the disciples was a great opportunity to attract people's hearts. He was originally a little jealous of Xiaohua for snatching this opportunity, but he didn't expect that Xiaohua would actually give this opportunity to him. However, he still declined. "Master, this is senior brother Li's draft, you see. Where would he have the time to do this, ah?" Xiaohua laughed. "You have received master's teachings, but he hasn't. Master will guide him in his cultivation during this period." "Thank you, master." Li Xiang was overjoyed hearing this, and Prince Lan was also happy. Xiaohua asked a few more questions about the Fortune Gate, the hidden immortal mainland, and even the Luoyang Merchant Union before he sent Prince Lan and the other Fortune Gate disciples out, leaving Li Xiang, Fu Jiwen, and the others in the Fortune Dao Palace. Fu Jiwen pondered for a moment, then said, "Disciple has a private matter to discuss with master." "Is it urgent?" Xiaohua was surprised and asked casually. "This matter is very important, it can't be considered urgent." Fu Jiwen answered honestly, but didn't say what it was. Then wait for a while." Xiaohua nodded, and Fu Jiwen withdrew. Subsequently, Xiaohua ordered Li Xiang to sit down cross-legged, then he stretched out a finger and pressed it between Li Xiang's eyebrows. A trace of crystal light entered, and a moment later, Xiaohua said with satisfaction, "Li Xiang, although your cultivation hasn't improved much in the past 200 years, your foundation is very solid, which suits your temperament. Now, Master will teach you some secret techniques and give you some pills. You should be able to enter the unity stage soon." Disciples' aptitude is not good, but to be able to receive Master's teachings and enter the unity stage in my lifetime, Disciple has long surpassed disciple's expectations. Disciple thanks Master for the gift. Li Xiang didn't regret that he could only enter the unity stage. Instead, he was grateful from the bottom of his heart. Give it a tip, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 4586. Seeing that Li Xiang's requirements were not high, not much different from when he was at Black Wind Ridge, Xiaohua sighed, Li Xiang, every cultivator's path is different, and their achievements are also different. You and Xiong Yi are Master's disciples, your foundation is indeed a little weak. But don't worry, Master will do his best to arrange some opportunities for you in the future. I hope you will go further and exceed Master's expectations. Moreover, your talent in this life. Xiaohua originally wanted to reveal some information about reincarnation, but he stopped when he was about to speak. After all, reincarnation was one of the world's mysteries. Xiaohua didn't have much confidence at this time, so he didn't dare to say this, and caused Li Xiang to be negligent. Li Xiang didn't understand the meaning in Xiaohua's words, and didn't notice that Xiaohua didn't mention the real meaning of Prince Lan. He thought that Prince Lan's achievements would be much higher than his, so Li Xiang smiled and said, Master, don't worry, disciple knows his own weight. Disciple will do his best to take care of the Fortune Gates affairs for Master. Good. Xiaohua gave Li Xiang a cultivation technique and medicinal pills, then took out the Kunlun mirror and said, during this time, you can cultivate in the Kunlun paradise. Thank you, Master. Li Xiang was overjoyed, but he didn't forget to say, also, Master, if possible, please consider other Foundation Establishment and Golden Core disciples, let them cultivate in the Kunlun paradise. The Kunlun paradise is different from the three mainlands. Disciples below the nascent soul realm are not suitable to cultivate in there. Xiaohua smiled and said, however, those disciples in the Qi refining realm can be considered. Don't worry, after you cultivate in seclusion, draw up a plan, Master will consider it. Speaking of this, Xiaohua hesitated again and asked, also, is the Hidden Immortal Mainland's Jade Pavilion Conference going to be held soon? Li Xiang was dazed for a moment, then nodded and said, yes, Master, it will be held in a month's time. Why, does Master want disciple to go to the Jade Pavilion Conference? Xiaohua smiled and said, you don't need to think too much about this matter. Master will ask Fujiwen to send a disciple to snatch an Imperial Preceptor's lot. It's not a big matter. Think about the development of our Fortune Gate's outer disciples. After all, it's a little troublesome. Yes, Master. Li Xiang understood Xiaohua's meaning. After that, Xiaohua shook the Kunlun mirror and took Li Xiang into the Shenhua continent. He then looked at Fujiwen and frowned. Disciple, didn't Sun Jian promise to persuade Immortal Emperor Goqin? Why is the Immortal Palace sending troops to annihilate my Fortune Gate? He returned to the Immortal Palace before all of you. If you hadn't come back in time, my Fortune Gate's foundation would be in trouble. Fujiwen looked around and said with a smile, Master, this is all in the past. Although General Sun has never explained anything, it is still a matter of the past. But seeing that Martial Uncle Wenxiu has become an immortal master of the Immortal Palace, we should know that General Sun is also a man of his word. There must be something wrong with this. What? Wenxiu had become an immortal master of the Immortal Palace? When did this happen? Xiaohua was somewhat stunned. Fujiwen was also stunned. He smiled apologetically and said, could it be that Martial Uncle Lei Ting didn't tell Master? He didn't. Xiaohua said with a smile. He was in a hurry to cultivate. After he escaped into the Kunlun immortal realm, he didn't say anything. My disciple, tell me about the things that have happened all these years. Yes, Master. Fujiwen didn't dare to be negligent. He told Xiaohua about the matters of the three continents. In the end, he said, there is news coming from the Continuous Merchant Union every day. These news are all stored in the Wind Pavilion. Master can go take a look if you have nothing to do. And Master understands. Xiaohua rubbed his chin thoughtfully. The Confucian cultivators have an immortal master. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas is weak, and the Paradise River is rising. This has a deep impact on the three continents. Oh, what about the Buddhist sect? The sutra seeking supreme bliss? Reporting to Master, the sutra seeking supreme bliss is quite far from the soaring dragon mountain range. There isn't much news about the continuous merchant union. However, the sutra seeking supreme bliss seems to have reached the hidden immortal mainland. I just don't know when it will end. Fujiwen smiled and said, if Master wants to know, disciple will send someone to ask. No need to be deliberate. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, I'm afraid Master doesn't have much time left. Master will only think about you all. Fujiwen was surprised, then he was overjoyed and shouted, Congratulations Master for reaching the peak of the Grand Ascension stage. Previously I was still a little worried, but now I can finally be at ease. Disciple, what do you mean? Xiaohua recalled what Fujiwen had said earlier, and a bad feeling arose in his heart. He asked curiously, Master's cultivation. Could it be that it has something to do with the important matter you mentioned? Yes, Master. Fujiwen thought for a while and said, Immortal Emperor Go Chen's ninth princess, Princess Xen, lost half of the Immortal Palace's Heaven's Heart and couldn't take out the Heaven's Heart during the Heaven's Selection Conference. In a fit of rage, Immortal Emperor Go Chen imprisoned her in the Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal and banished her to the lower realm. It's been nearly 300 years since then. What? Xin was imprisoned in the Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal? Who did you hear that from? When Xiaohua heard this, his complexion unconsciously changed. He stood up from the jade chair in shock. The originally calm thunderstorm suddenly erupted like a gigantic thunder sword that directly slashed into the blue dome of heaven. Tens of thousands of li to the left of the thunderstorm, the silent thunderstorm crazily expanded, swallowing countless clouds and shattering them into pieces. Fujiwen only felt as if the entire world was collapsing. Countless stars dimmed, countless clouds rose and fell. His entire soul and body were like a falling leaf, rapidly spinning without landing. Master, it's by Sun who said it. Fujiwen couldn't breathe. He struggled with all his might, barely spitting out a few words from his mouth. Immediately after, Xiaohua made an end sound. As if the heavens and earth were splitting apart, the space around Fujiwen had light and darkness, the energy of heaven and earth, and the freedom of rebirth. Fujiwen looked at his master in shock. It had only been 50 years since they last met, and he was even more unable to understand his master's realm. The feeling of being a drop in the ocean involuntarily, slowly emerged along with the sweat on his back. Xiaohua's figure was like a mountain, standing there steadily. His mood was like the thunderstorm in the sky, crazily swaying, unruly sweeping across the horizon. Towards Princess Xen, there was no need to mention the hardships of experiencing life and death together in the profound water palace. There was no need to mention the dreamlike sweetness in the illusory array. There was no need to mention the sorrowful bitterness when the 3 cups of fate ended. Just the tacit understanding between the thumb and the hand that held her hand, and the kiss between life and death in the profound water palace were enough for Xiaohua to plant the seed of love in his heart for Xen. Xiaohua had the cultivation of a Buddhist sect, but he wasn't a Buddha. Xiaohua was a cultivator, but he wasn't an immortal. Even immortals had the love of Su Ji and Xingyue, so how could Xiaohua not find new feelings after leaving fairy Hongxia for hundreds of thousands of years? Not to mention the hazy feelings between Xiaohua and Princess Xen, it had already become a seed that was growing strong. Xiaohua knew that Princess Xen's heavenly heart was so important that she was willing to be imprisoned in the Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal for him. Xiaohua couldn't help but be moved. There was a kind of love called concealment. There was also a kind of love called sacrifice. There was also a kind of love called completion. Xiaohua also wanted to tell Xen that there was a kind of love called commitment. Xiaohua steadied his mind, and his gaze swept across Fujiwen's body like stars. Moreover, after being banished to the soaring Dragon Mountain range, she had been secretly delighted to see Fujiwen's cultivation. She knew that her prediction was right, but when she saw Xiaohua's Grand Ascension stage aura again, she still found it hard to calm down. She really did not dare to imagine that in just a few hundred years, Xiaohua could actually stand side by side with Emperor Go-Qin and become the supreme cultivator of the human race on the 3 continents. Moreover, she was also shocked by the East Sea Emperor's scheme. Chapter 4587. When Bian entered the Fortune Dao Palace, she glanced around and saw that Xiaohua was the only one sitting in the main hall. Although the Xiaohua in front of her didn't look any different from the previous Xiaohua, Bian didn't dare to neglect him. She hurriedly retracted her gaze and followed behind Fujiwen. Lowering her head, she flew to the bottom of the stage and kowtowed, "Servant Bian greets Dao Master." Xiaohua was stunned and smiled bitterly. He glanced at Fujiwen and hurriedly helped Bian up. A smile appeared on his face as he said, "Bian, no need to be so polite. As the saying goes, master and disciple are like father and son. Fujiwen is my disciple and my child. You are his dual cultivation partner and my Fortune Gate's daughter-in-law. You can call him Dao Master in front of others and call him Master in private." "Yes, Master." Bian was overjoyed and hurriedly corrected herself. Xiaohua looked at Bian and reprimanded Fujiwen. "Disciple, you're hiding something. You haven't taught Bian the 5 energies unification technique that martial uncle Wensu taught you." Without martial uncle's approval, disciple wouldn't dare. Fujiwen's eyes lit up and he hurriedly bowed. "You can teach it yourself. Master will tell you where your martial uncle is." Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand again, taking out some pills and flying them to Fujiwen. "These are also for you and Bian." "Thank you, Master." Fujiwen and Bian replied at the same time. After the 2 of them stood up, Xiaohua thought for a moment before taking out a bottle of pills and handing it over to Bian. He said, "Bian, you were once again banished to the lower realms because of XNX. Master truly feels guilty in his heart. This is a pill used by the female cultivators of the Dao sect. To us, personally refined by Master. Wanwan knew that this was Xiaohua loving the house and its crow. Because of his guilt towards XNX, he once again looked at her in a new light. Her heart warmed. How could she still accept it? Unknowingly, she fell to her knees again and kowtowed as she cried out, "Master, this disciple is Fujiwen's wife, and also your daughter-in-law. Right now, our family still lacks a princess. This disciple pleads for Master to save the princess. This disciple has experienced the heaven's punishment of the heaven's punishment crystal. I truly know how powerful this heaven's punishment is. This disciple is not sure if Her Highness can survive the most unbearable loneliness in this world. Master, please make a move soon." Xiaohua's face was slightly red as he raised his hand to help Swan and I up again. He said in shame, "Swan and get up. It's fine if I didn't know about it before, but now that I know, how can I just stand by and do nothing? Master owes XN too much. I will not let XN down in the future." "Thank you, Master." Momo's previous words were actually somewhat threatening Xiaohua, but seeing that Xiaohua didn't care, her heart relaxed, and she was also happy for the new princess. Xiaohua pointed at the jade bottle, and the pill fell into Bian's hand. And didn't say anything else, and carefully put it away. "Bian, tell me the origin of this matter, as well as the result of your discussion with Jiwen." Xiaohua asked again. "Yes, Master." Bian didn't dare to neglect and report it again. But this time, what Bian said was different from what Fujiwen said. Bian said more about the new princess's longing for Xiaohua in the Immortal Palace, as well as the many other princesses' schemes against the new princess. She even spoke about the Heaven's Choice Assembly in detail. And when she talked about the 3 cups of fate, Bian's face was full of tears. "Master, actually before I left, this disciple felt that there was something wrong with the princess. It was as if she was going to say goodbye to Master forever. At that time, this disciple even advised Her Highness that although the other half of the Heaven's heart was lost, with the full power of the Immortal Palace, although the 3 continents were big, it was not impossible to find it again. After finding it, it wouldn't be too late to meet Master again. There was no need to meet Master before the punishment." But Her Highness just smiled and didn't answer, only facing the bronze mirror. This disciple had never seen Her Highness without makeup so solemn. A woman will make herself beautiful for her lover. Master, at that time, this disciple knew that Her Highness truly loved Master. Perhaps she was afraid that Master would take some extreme actions after knowing that she was being punished by the heavens, so she wanted to comfort Master in advance. Moreover, when she returned to the immortal palace from the hidden immortal continent, Her Highness couldn't hide her smile. She was simply not afraid of the heavens. At that time, this disciple was scared to death. I was really afraid that Her Highness would have other thoughts, so I tried my best to persuade Her Highness. Afterwards, Her Highness went to the 3 provinces of thunder and lightning to receive the heavens' punishment. The entire immortal palace was on alert. It was said that the heavens' punishment was personally controlled by immortal Emperor Go-Chin. Even the Eastern Sea Empress didn't know which prison Her Highness was imprisoned in, let alone where the prison was in the 3 continents. Listening to Bayan, Xiaohua's mind was also filled with thoughts. Obviously, Princess Xian didn't tell anyone about the whereabouts of the half-heaven's heart. Even at this time, Bayan didn't know that the immortal palace had already gathered the 5 Qi unification method. Of course, Wen Chu was also one of the Fortune Gate secrets. Without Xiaohua's approval, Fu Jiwen didn't dare to casually tell Bayan about Wen Chu. Xiaohua was just a little confused. Since Sun Jian had already returned to the Immortal Palace and Wen Chu had offered the 5 Qi unification method to the Immortal Palace, Immortal Emperor Go-Chin probably already knew that Xian's half-heaven's heart had fallen into Xiaohua's hands. In particular, with the 5 Qi unification method, that half-heaven's heart had already lost its effect. Immortal Emperor Go-Chin imprisoning Xian no longer had any meaning. Xiaohua didn't know why Immortal Emperor Go-Chin didn't pardon Xian. Bayan was very obedient and didn't say much about the Nangong family's marriage proposal. He only said one sentence before continuing, "When this disciple woke up from the coma and saw that I was in a strange place, I couldn't help but feel a little nervous. However, after this disciple checked my cultivation, I discovered that my cultivation wasn't crippled like the other Immortal Palace disciples who were banished to the lower realm. This disciple was overjoyed and thought that Empress Dowager was being lenient. However, when this disciple met a Fortune Gate disciple and found out that this was the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range, this disciple suddenly realized. This was clearly Empress Dowager wanting this disciple to deliver a letter to Master. Therefore, this disciple hurriedly went to the mountain gate to look for young Master Fu, but the hateful thing was. Fu Jiwen coughed and said, "Bayan, pick the main point." "It's fine." Xiaohua smiled and said, "Bayan, just say it." "Actually, it's nothing much." Bayan smiled and said, "The Soaring Dragon Mountain Range's Fortune Gate disciple was different from what this disciple had imagined. The disciple guarding the array was actually a little arrogant and insisted that this disciple take out their palace masterland's handwritten order before they were willing to let this disciple pass. Oh, even a 4th grade Essence Force master like you is so arrogant." Xiaohua wasn't surprised and asked with a smile. "That's right," Bayan answered. At that time, the Fortune Gate disciples had just killed several dozen Wen sages and were full of arrogance. This disciple, a 4th grade Essence Force master, was not in their eyes at all. And then? Xiaohua nodded, acknowledging Bayan's complaint and asked again. "This disciple has plenty of ways to deal with this kind of disciple." Bayan answered, "I gave them some benefits and said some threats. I also reported the names of Lu Yi, Wang Bianfei, and the others that young Master Fu had mentioned to this disciple earlier. Coincidentally, Wang Bianfei was inside the mountain gate, and after reporting, this disciple naturally entered the Fortune Gate." "What did you discuss with Jiwen?" Xiaohua closed his eyes, and his expression was indifferent as he asked. Bayan glanced at Fu Jiwen and signaled him with his eyes, indicating that this was the time for Fu Jiwen to perform. Fu Jiwen helplessly shook his head and said, "Master, this disciple and Bayan have discussed and felt that there are 2 difficulties in rescuing Her Highness. The first difficulty is to find the Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal, and the second difficulty is to find a place with innate restrictions and destroy the Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal. The second one is considered the easiest, and the first one is the most difficult." Because even the East Sea Empress doesn't know where the Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal is, I'm afraid that in the entire Immortal Palace, only the 3 lightning provinces have records of this. Therefore, if Master wants to rescue Her Royal Highness, he must first enter the 3 provinces of Leiting. And said that the 3 provinces of Leiting are in charge of punishment and are heavily guarded. It is impossible for ordinary people to get close. However, Her Royal Highness is very familiar with the 3 provinces of Leiting. Old Man Sun Yu is an important minister in the 3 provinces of Leiting. If Master can meet Sun Yu, he may be able to get some information. But if Master wants to enter the 3 lightning provinces, you must first enter the Immortal Palace. But where is the Immortal Palace? Bayan doesn't know, and Gusu Chiodi probably doesn't know either. Ordinary scholarly families also don't know. If you want to find the way to the Immortal Palace, you can either go through the 4 families, Sun Jian, or the Star-Picking Tower. Of course, I didn't think that Marshal Ant Wensu would enter the Wensu Palace of Literature. If Marshal Ant Wensu can cooperate from the inside, it shouldn't be too difficult for Master to enter the Immortal Palace. After passing the most difficult stage, Master just needs to find out where Her Highness Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal is in the 3 lightning provinces. And here, General Sun Yu should be able to help. Hearing this, Xiaohua shook his head and said, since the East Sea Empress can't find out, how can Sun Jian find out? Master, you don't know. Bayan smiled and said, the East Sea Empress doesn't know how to find out, but she can't. The Empress is the mother of the world, and she has to be a role model for all the women in the world. She also has to treat the 9 princesses fairly, so she can't find out. And General Sun. At this point, Bayan suddenly realized something and said curiously, Master, the Sun Jian that Master is talking about can't be perfected Lord Qingyan of the Sun Palace? He's still alive. Xiaohua didn't hide it from Bayan, didn't I say just now? He has already returned to the Immortal Palace. Oh, I understand. Bayan stuck out her tongue and immediately thought of Sun Cho, who had gone to the Hall of Fragrance. She knew why the East Sea Empress had asked her to send a letter to Xiaohua. It must be because Sun Jian had revealed Xiaohua's strength. Then, Bayan said confidently, before I was demoted, perfected Lord Qingyan was in the Hall of Fragrance. But he was called Sun Cho at that time, and he was also in charge of the Sun Palace. I think the East Sea Empress called him to the Hall of Fragrance to find out where Her Highness is. On the other hand, the Empress sent me to the lower realm to send a letter to Master. This way, we can work together from the inside. Donate, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 4588. In. Xiaohua nodded and smiled. Since that's the case, I believe Sun Jian's side is also investigating. We should also make preparations. Master will rest for a period of time before going to investigate the location of the Immortal Palace and contact your martial uncle Wensu. Yes, Master. Fu Jiwen agreed and said, then disciple. We'll also try to contact the 4 great families and see if I can get some information. And Nangong Jingying, she actually dares to snatch the princess from Master. We must teach them a lesson. Tao Wu also shouted angrily. Xiaohua waved his hand and said rather leniently, when Master heard those words just now, I also felt uncomfortable in my heart. However, the Nangong family doesn't know of Master's relationship with the new princess. They wanted to use the new princess' freedom as the price to threaten the Empress. However, the indirect effect was also to let the new princess obtain her freedom. However, their plans were all for naught in the end. That won't do. Tao Wu raised her head and said stubbornly, how can a toad like Nangong Jing covet the princess? Although Master is magnanimous and has telepathy with the princess, disciple feels uncomfortable just thinking about it. Furthermore, the Nangong family will definitely publicize this matter. Even if the princess marries Master in the future, Master's face won't look good. And Tao Wu is right. Xiaohua nodded. Jiwen, send disciple to contact Nangong Pingping of the Nangong family. Tell him that Master has something to say to Nangong Tianjiao. Yes, disciple understands. Fu Jiwen agreed without thinking. Xiaohua then explained, Nangong Pingping is the leader of the Nangong family who entered the Star Moon Palace. Master has saved their lives before. Yes, disciple understands. Fu Jiwen smiled and said, Master has made a trip to the Star Moon Palace. I wonder how many people he has saved. Oh, Master, disciple heard that Zhai Xingzi and Gusuchiodi also entered the Star Moon Palace. Did they have any fortuitous encounters? Tao Wu and Gusuchiodi had a good relationship and naturally thought of the two of them. Her tone was filled with envy. Xiaohua smiled and said, There are many fortuitous encounters in the world. The Star Moon Palace is just one of them. This time, the Star Moon Palace is different from before. Who knows how many humans and demons have died in there? What is there for you to be envious of? When he spoke up to this point, Xiaohua looked into the distance and frowned slightly. However, I've already promised Zhai Xingzi and Gusu Chiodi in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm that your martial uncle Wen Chu would go to the Gusu clan on Zhai Xingzi's behalf to propose marriage for Gusu Chiodi. Now that he's become the Immortal Palace's Master of Literature Palace, it's quite troublesome. I have to hurry and find your martial uncle Wen Chu. Master. Upon hearing this, Tao Wu hurriedly said, Fu Jiwen frowned and stopped him. Xiaohua was puzzled and asked, What's wrong? It's nothing. Fu Jiwen smiled and said, I'm going to wait for Master to come back and get married. After all, if I don't go through the ceremony, I won't be able to be with Momo and have to give her family an explanation. Hearing these words, Xiaohua's mind suddenly gave birth to a clap of thunder, and the thunderstorm in the sky once again shook violently. That's right, that's right. Xiaohua lost his voice and said in a low voice, Even Momo and Gusuchiodi want a status. XN is Immortal Emperor Go Chen's 9th princess. How can I save her without knowing the truth? Those who know won't say much, but what about those who don't know? What will they think? What will they say? Didn't Fu Jiwen tell me 2 stories that day? If I don't save XN openly, if I don't openly propose marriage to the Immortal Palace, how can I stop everyone's tongues from wagging? How can I give the Nangong family a fair counterattack? Even if XN doesn't care about these things, the Immortal Palace cares about these things, this Zhao's descendants care about these things, and in the future, the Fortune Gate's hundreds of millions of disciples will care about these things. Xiaohua seemed to be pondering, but also seemed to be muttering to himself. He didn't avoid Fu Jiwen and Fu Jiwen. When Fu Jiwen and Tao Wu heard this, shock appeared on their faces. At the same time, Tao Wu was so excited that his face turned red. He grabbed Fu Jiwen's hand and stared fixedly at Xiaohua. That's right. Xiaohua had already made his decision. He looked up at Fu Jiwen and said, Now that the Immortal Palace has obtained the 5 energies origin method, that half of the heavens will has no meaning. Princess XNXIN's punishment should also have a conclusion. However, this conclusion needs an excuse, and also an explanation for Immortal Emperor Go Qin to the world and the other 8 princesses. The Nangong family just happened to give the Eastern Sea Empress this excuse. I'm sure they've already started to prepare and send a letter to the Immortal Palace. XN gave me half of the heaven's will to save me that day. After I used it, I had no way of returning it to XN. This caused XN to be imprisoned in the Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal. Since XN is like this, I can't let her down. I must openly save her. XN has such deep feelings for me, so I can't let her down. I must announce to the world that I am XN's true love. I'm prepared to propose marriage to Immortal Emperor Go Chen. Ah? After listening to the end, Fu Jiwen was a bit dumbfounded. This was because he understood Xiaohua the most and knew that Xiaohua didn't like to attract attention. Therefore, all his previous thoughts were based on this. It would be best if they didn't reveal anything and quietly rescued the new princess. However, he didn't expect that Xiaohua would propose marriage to Immortal Emperor Go Qin in order to save Princess XN. Master! Baicun was abnormally excited and shouted, Your idea is the best. Disciple feels that Her Highness likes it the most. If she knew, she would be so happy to marry Master. However, Disciple still has a small doubt. Xiaohua asked, And replied, Master, don't forget. The Nangong family proposed marriage first. Moreover, the Eastern Sea Empress has already agreed to the Nangong family. With her temper, she definitely won't go back on her words. If she doesn't say anything, the immortal emperor will definitely agree to the Nangong family's marriage. Now that Master proposes marriage, how can these two agree? After all, it's first come first serve. Hee, that's easy. Xiaohua smiled. Master won't propose marriage first. I'll ask about Princess Xian's whereabouts first and save her before the Nangong family. Then, I'll return to the immortal palace to propose marriage. It's best if we can cook the rice. Fu Jiwen took the opportunity to shout. Bye, and spat but still nodded. This method is the most realistic. No! Xiaohua smiled. Others can, but not Xian. The 9th princess of the immortal emperor must have etiquette above all. Master, you can actually hide on the side and suddenly make a move when the Nangong family saves Xian. Fu Jiwen reminded again. Xiaohua shook his head. When it comes to saving Xian, you must take the initiative in everything. You can't give anyone a handle. If you want to do it, you have to be the hero who saves the beauty and the lovers finally get married. You have to do it perfectly. That's not right, Master. How can you interrogate immortal Emperor Go-Chin? Fu Jiwen asked curiously. Even if you find the immortal palace, how can he meet you? Master is the supreme cultivator of the human race, equal to the immortal emperor. How can he not meet you? And curled his lips and said a few words to Fu Jiwen. Then he reminded Xiaohua, however, Master, immortal Emperor Go-Chin is the most cunning. I'm afraid you won't be able to outtalk him. You have to think of a plan to interrogate him. I'm the worst at talking. Xiaohua stretched out his hands, looked at them flashing with lightning and laughed. I'm the best at persuading people with virtue. Master, Fu Jiwen exclaimed, could it be that you want to fight at the Lingyun Palace? Xiaohua rolled his eyes at Fu Jiwen and said, Disciple, I'm going to ask for Xian's whereabouts and then ask for her hand in marriage. If I fight at the Lingyun Palace and trample on immortal Emperor Go-Chen's face, do you think immortal Emperor Go-Chen's temper will be good enough to not care about this? And still betroth Xian to me? That's true. Fu Jiwen rubbed his nose and said awkwardly, not to mention immortal Emperor Go-Chen who leads the Confucians, even a rich man with some farmland won't agree. So, Xiaohua smiled and said, with my face as a human Grand Ascension Stage Master, I'm sure immortal Emperor Go-Chen will tell me if I ask for Xian's whereabouts. Then, I'll rescue Princess Xian and bring her to the immortal palace to beg for mercy. Then I'll catch him off guard. What's done can't be undone. Master, and said in disbelief, you're thinking too simply. The immortal emperor represents the heavenly prestige. As the saying goes, the heavenly prestige is unpredictable. Maybe he really won't reveal it. Don't forget, even the imperial empress doesn't know where the princess is imprisoned. Xiaohua sneered and looked up at the sky. Then there's nothing to say. Xian has treated me so well, I can't let her down. Then, I'll destroy the Lingyun Palace. Good. And jumped up in joy and shouted, attack the Lingyun Palace. We must attack the Lingyun Palace and let the 8 princesses know that the 9th princess's husband is someone who can pierce through the heavens. Let's see who dares to hit us when we're down. Master, you have to think twice. Fu Jiwen looked at the old man and the young man with a wry smile. Neither of them was afraid of making a big deal out of this. Unfortunately, and ignored Fu Jiwen and said anxiously, then, Master, if that's the case, I have to contact Marshal Ant Wenchu and hurry to find the immortal palace. If we're too late, the Nangong family will take the lead and that will be bad. Attacking the Lingyun Palace is just a preparation. I don't think it'll happen. Of course, if it really does happen, then it'll be the time for our fortune gate to establish our prestige. This is also an opportunity that immortal Emperor Go-Chen has given me. Xiaohua smiled coldly. So, there's no need to involve Marshal Ant Wenchu. I have my own plans. How does Master want to find the immortal palace? Bai, and was a little confused. Give it as a reward, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 4589. Master has already asked Li Xiang about it. Xiaohua smiled. The Hidden Immortal Mainland's Jadestage Conference is about to be held in a month. Isn't that a great opportunity? Master, what does the Jadestage Conference have to do with the Immortal Palace? Bai, and was even more confused and asked curiously, Disciple knows about the Jadestage Conference. That year, Gusuchiori was still a star monarch. That place is where the guilty officials of the Immortal Palace are punished. Even the Star Monarch Hall's Hall Master wouldn't know about the Immortal Palace's location. Fujiwen seemed to have thought of something and asked with a smile, Master, why did you send your disciples to snatch an Imperial Preceptor's lot? Could it be that Master wants to establish a country? Bai, and was unhappy that Fujiwen changed the topic, but just as she was about to speak, Xiaohua answered, Disciple, do you know about the Xiao country? Of course I know, Fujiwen smiled. Disciple had just returned to the soaring Dragon Mountain range and heard the disciples talking about the Xiao country. Is Master planning to establish a country in the Xiao country? Xiaohua smiled bitterly. It's not that Master is ambitious, but Master has no choice but to establish a country. Xiaohua then recounted what he had seen and heard in the Xiao country, as well as how Xiong Yi and the others had captured the country's ruler. In the end, he said, instead of letting those Confucian cultivators or Grand Mist ancestors' subordinates take advantage of the Xiao country, it's better for our fortune gate to do it ourselves. Moreover, didn't Master say it earlier? Xiong Yi and Li Xiang are fortune gate's outer disciples, and you are fortune gate's inner disciples. Not to mention you, even your subordinates are stronger than Xiong Yi and the others. How do you expect outer disciples to interact with inner disciples? I can imagine how awkward it must be for Li Xiang and Prince Lan to sit on these two chairs in front of me when I'm not around. But if I ask you to sit on this chair, you definitely won't be willing. Therefore, Master has decided to send the outer disciples to the Xiao country. And Master's plan is good. Fujiwen nodded. One is the Xiao country, the hidden immortal mainland's first Dao Empire, and the other is the soaring Dragon Mountain range, the hidden immortal mainland's first Dao sect. They can support each other and develop together. Bai, and couldn't help but ask, Master, how do you plan to find the immortal palace? Listen carefully, you'll know soon. Xiaohua smiled, then asked Fujiwen, how many imperial preceptors will there be in the Yaotai meeting this time? I'm not sure about that. Fujiwen shook his head and said, after I returned to the mountain, I read the information of the Luo Yi Business Alliance. It seems that the last time, there were 1,200. This time, there will be fewer, but there should be about 800. Why are there so many? Xiaohua asked curiously. Back then, Master had snatched 1 out of 10 and racked his brains. The calamity in the hidden immortal continent has affected the kingdom of Taoism. Almost every day, the kingdom of Taoism is destroyed. Moreover, the interval between the Jadestage gathering has been long. Naturally, there will be more lots for the State Master. Fujiwen said with a smile, however, Master, isn't it better to have more lots for the State Master? Master still can't find the way to the Immortal Palace with these 800 lots? Hearing this, Bai, and finally understood. Xiaohua's idea was really incredible, but it was very feasible. Since the kingdom of Taoism had to be worshipped when the kingdom of Taoism was established, the lot of the State Master had to return to the Seoul Official Hall. The Seoul Official Hall was in the Immortal Palace, so following the lot of the State Master would naturally lead to the Immortal Palace. Of course, 1 lot of the State Master might not be enough, but what about 10? What about 100? What about 1,000? With Xiaohua's strength as a human Mahayana stage cultivator, he could definitely find the way to the Immortal Palace. In this way, Xiaohua could step into the Immortal Palace's Nantian Gate without relying on any information or contacting Wenchu. Master, disciple, really admires you. And said, only Master can become a human Mahayana stage cultivator. unlike some people who know. But don't say it. After saying that, and pinched Fu Jiwen's waist. Fu Jiwen didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly responded with an ouch, to show that he had received Anne's anger. Xiaohua looked at the young couple, and after a while, he said, and used to be an immortal official of the Immortal Palace, so he has considered some things more comprehensively. When in Baituthan, think about this more carefully. We will set off for the Yaotai Mountain in 10 days. Yes, master. Fu Jiwen and bowed and agreed. Also, Jiwen, you take and your disciples back to the Shenhua continent. Let and take over Xiong Yi's matter and investigate the culprit behind the Shao country's Confucian cultivators. You will organize the 100,000 Fortune Gate disciples and accompany Master to the Yaotai Mountain. Yes. Fu Jiwen agreed and left and in the Fortune Dao Palace while he went to gather his disciples. Tell Master about Princess Xn. Xiaohua smiled and said, she never mentions anything about the Immortal Palace. Feng Xiu was a little embarrassed and said, Master, let's talk about this after you rescue Her Highness. After all, this disciple doesn't know what Her Highness wants to say. If this disciple says something wrong, Her Highness will punish this disciple. Alright. Xiaohua also knew that it was difficult for Yan Cheng. After pondering for a moment, he asked, oh right, back then when Master met Princess Xn, she was only around the 4th grade of essence energy. It seems like her strength back then was not comparable to yours. Why is that? At the mention of this, anger immediately appeared on Anne's face. He said fiercely, isn't it all because of Princess Qing Qing of the Jasper Flower Palace? And then told him about Princess Qing Qing's plot to frame Princess Xn. In the end, he said, Princess Qing Qing is injured and her cultivation is not fully recovered. I heard from the maidservants of the school of the Emperor Star that they once begged the princess to report this matter to the Emperor Immortal. However, the princess felt that the Emperor Immortal was too busy with government affairs and was troubled by the matters of the 4 great clans. If she told the Emperor Immortal would be even angrier, so she didn't say anything. At that time, the princess probably wanted to avoid Princess Qing Qing, so she descended to the lower realm. Hearing this, Xiaohua was stunned. He seemed to have thought of something. He looked deeply at and said, and didn't Xn tell you why she went to the Saint River in the Western Paradise? And asked curiously, why did Her Highness tell this disciple this? Xiaohua said word by word, when Master met Princess Xn in the Western Paradise, she had invited a Buddhist disciple who was proficient in Heaven's Feet. She also wanted to invite a Taoist cultivator who was proficient in water escape and formations to the Xianshui Palace at the bottom of the Saint River to save a nephew of hers. She also said that this nephew of hers was suppressed in the Xianshui Palace. How is that possible? And didn't care and said casually, Her Highness's nephew did, however, at this point, and suddenly froze. The details of her time with Princess Xn suddenly appeared in her mind. And immediately understood. Wasn't the nephew that Princess Xn was talking about her? And had never thought that a descendant of an immortal emperor would risk her life to save her in an unknown place when she was seriously injured. Just for that possibility alone. Princess Xn and knelt on the ground and cried as she kowtowed to the sky. Even if this servant's body is smashed to pieces, this servant will still save you from the heaven's punishment prison crystal. Otherwise, this servant won't be able to repay your love for me. After and finished crying and kowtowing, Xiaohua helped and up and said, Xn is always so considerate of others. She treats you the same way as Master. After hearing so much, she didn't tell you or Master about it. This is the bearing of an immortal emperor's princess. Whether it's you or Master, we can't let her down. Of course, the heavenly Tao is fair as well. If she didn't save you, I'm afraid you wouldn't have been banished to the lower realm to save her. Master, I don't want to eliminate any karma. Momo stopped crying, looked up at the sky, and said, I just hope that Master can go to the Immortal Palace and force out the princess's whereabouts. Teach the arrogant Immortal Palace a lesson, as well as those immortal officials who hurt the princess. After a while, Fu Jiwen returned with his disciple. He looked at Bai An's increasingly determined expression in bewilderment and did not ask any questions. Meanwhile, Xiaohua took out the Kunlun mirror and sent them all into the Shenhua continent. Then he closed his eyes and meditated. The Yaotai Mountain was still the Yaotai Mountain. For thousands of years, that bluestone peak was like a jade tablet worshipping an immortal palace. It stood between the heavens and the earth, regardless of whether the wind blew or the rain fell, regardless of whether the wind was biting cold. Not to mention that Xiaohua had left for more than 300 years, it was like a blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, nothing had changed on Yaotai Mountain. The mountain was still the same mountain, and the water was still the same water. Even under the Yaotai Mountain, there were still some tents in a radius of nearly 100 miles. Around these tents, there were still many soldiers and generals in bright armor. Those monarchs who were recruiting Dao cultivators were also waiting respectfully for them. However, the current Yaotai Mountain was different from before. Snowflakes were fluttering in the sky, and these snowflakes were different from most places in the hidden immortal continent. The snowflakes were the size of a palm and looked like white cranes. As the snowflakes fluttered in the air, they danced along the protrusions on both sides. It was very beautiful. However, when the snowflakes fell to the ground, it could be seen clearly. Rather than saying that these snowflakes looked like white cranes, they looked more like 2 palms of yaoju flowers. The yaoju flower was a kind of flower that ordinary Confucian cultivators in the hidden immortal continent liked. The yaoju flower was pure white in color and had a kind of faint fragrance without makeup. It symbolized the noble and virtuous conduct of Confucian cultivators. Moreover, the petals of the yaoju flower were not round. Instead, they were folded together, just like how Confucian cultivators put their hands together when they saluted. When the wind blew, the yaoju flower swayed as if it was saluting someone. This was the real reason why Yaotai Mountain was famous in the secular world. Chapter 4590. The strangest thing was that when the snowflakes fell from the Yaotai Mountain, whether it was on the ground or on the mountains, before the snowflakes melted, the closed palms were all facing the same direction. No one knew whether that direction was where the Immortal Palace was located or not, but everyone knew that even if it wasn't that direction. Was it after the Yaotai Mountain became famous? Yaoju snow covered the sky and covered the mountains. In this heavy snow, there were thousands of Taoist cultivators standing quietly in the air. Their eyes flashed as they stared fervently at the Yaotai Mountain, waiting for the Yaotai gathering to begin. These cultivators were no different from the cultivators 300 years ago. Although they knew that this was the Immortal Palace's arrangement, they had no choice but to gather here and wait for an opportunity to survive and cultivate. However, in this group of cultivators, there was a mid-nascent soul cultivator who was different from the others. This cultivator had a handsome face and a tall figure. His face carried a kind of indifference and confidence. He didn't look at the Yaotai Mountain. Instead, he looked at the nascent soul cultivators in the distance from time to time, as if he was looking for something. Occasionally, a few nascent soul cultivators would notice his gaze and nod at him in acknowledgement. This cultivator was called Zhi Qingzi. He was from the Yan province's curved cloud pavilion and had entered the ranks of nascent soul cultivators 500 years ago. Moreover, Zhi Qingzi had also participated in the Yaotai Mountains gatherings several hundred years ago. However, this Zhi Qingzi had the ability to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. When he attended the banquet held by Reverend Huoda, he first raised his cup to Reverend Huoda. Then he was moved by Reverend Qing Su's words. The next day, when the Star Lord Palace's Hall Master Kong Hongwu took out the lot of 10 state preceptors, Zhi Qingzi was one of the first nascent soul cultivators to leave the Yaotai Mountain. Thus, Zhi Qingzi was one of the few nascent soul cultivators who escaped that disaster. Zhi Qingzi left the Yaotai Mountain and lost the opportunity to establish a country. If he wanted to cultivate, he had to find another way. Reverend Qing Su was naturally his first choice. After Reverend Qing Su left with a few gold core cultivators as a cover, Ji Qingzi and a few other nascent soul cultivators caught up with Reverend Qing Su and became the Grand Mist Ancestors' subordinates. Taoist Master Qing Su was originally unhappy that he failed to recruit Xiao Hua, but when he saw Ji Qingzi and other nascent soul cultivators coming over to pledge their allegiance, he was very happy. Soon after, he did not dare to stay in the vicinity of Yaotai Mountain and flew away with Ji Qingzi. After that, they waited at several other places for the Dao Gates cultivators that they had arranged to meet before returning together to pay their respects to the Grand Mist Ancestor. Even though the Grand Mist Ancestor was cold by nature, he had absolute leadership skills when it came to developing his forces. He treated Ji Qingzi and the others very well and was not stingy with their cultivation techniques, pills, and secret techniques. In the past 200 years, Ji Qingzi, who had reached the end of his cultivation, broke through his bottleneck once again and reached the late nascent soul stage. He became Taoist Qing Su's right-hand man in one fell swoop. Previously, this Yaodai Mountain was the place where Qing Su Taoist often came to recruit people. Later on, when Qing Su Taoist left for the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, Ji Qingzi was in charge of this place. This time round, apart from being in charge of recruiting Dao sect cultivators, Ji Qingzi had also brought over 100 cultivators to snatch the lot of the imperial tutor. Looking at the fluttering Yao Jukshu, Ji Qingzi's gaze drifted away. The scene from several hundred years ago involuntarily appeared in his mind. AI, it said that fate makes fools of people. It's really so. Thinking back, that Taoist Huada was so full of energy at the banquet that I was completely convinced. But who knew? He was actually a pawn of the Star Lord Palace. The Yaotai Mountain gathering that time was also a rare danger. Fortunately, I reacted quickly and withdrew in time. If I had followed Taoist Huada into Yaotai Mountain, I would definitely have fallen on the Yaotai Mountain like those nascent soul cultivators. Less than 1 out of 10 would survive. This is something that has never happened before in the Yaotai Mountain gathering. Moreover, there are many mysteries in the Yaotai Mountain gathering that have not been solved even until today. Who killed the Star Lord Palace's Kong Hongwu? Even though some people suspect that it's my Grand Mist Ancestor, he has always smiled without saying anything and has never admitted it directly. Who knows if he disdains to admit it or denies it? After all, ambushing and killing a 5th-level Essence Energy Grandmaster is really nothing much to him. Some people also say that it's an internal strife in the Immortal Palace. There are other forces in the Star Lord Palace. Otherwise, how could there only be 10 State Masters in the Yaotai Mountain gathering? It's clear that someone from the Immortal Palace set a trap for Kong Hongwu. Moreover, the Confucian cultivator hiding among the Taoist cultivators also killed several of Kong Hongwu's trusted subordinates one by one, bringing the entire Yaotai Mountain under his control. Of course, some people also say that it's Xiao Hua, Taoist Xiao, whose name is now more famous than the ancestor. But others may not know, but I saw Xiao Hua at the banquet that year. He was really only a nascent soul cultivator at that time. It seems that he wasn't Taoist Huada's opponent. How could he possibly kill Kong Hongwu? Moreover, didn't the ancestors say at that time that Xiao Hua's strength was not enough to kill him? Xiao Hua's strength is not enough to kill Kong Hongwu. It must be the Immortal Palace's method. Perhaps the mastermind behind the scenes is the current Star Lord Palace's Palace Master Linghu Pihuan. Ji Qingzi had just thought of Linghu Pihuan when rumble. The sound of beating drums resounded from the Yaotai Mountain. The sound of the drums was ear-splitting. The red clouds began to roll, and the snowflakes in the sky were shattered into pieces. Immediately, rays of golden light pierced straight down from the clouds, dyeing those snowflakes. Regardless of whether it was the snowflakes or the snowflakes, they all showed a kind of graceful luster. In this golden light, the red clouds in the sky began to gather in every direction. In no more than a moment, they again condensed into 28 enormous clouds. 28 brightly armored immortal generals appeared above the clouds. Ji Qingzi's gaze swept around. He already saw clearly that these immortal generals were the 28 star generals. They were different from the ones he had seen before. let alone that horn-wood dragon Linghu Pyron, well-wood dragon Shangguan Yeren, and tail-fire tiger Ouyang Jingran's appearances were different. Even the other dozen star generals had changed. Immediately, many ceremonial guards spread out. Dressed in Confucian attire, wearing a tall crown on his head, and holding a jade tablet in his hand, the figure of Star Lord Palace's palace master Linghu Pihuan flew out from the Yaotai Mountain. Linghu Pihuan was the same as Kong Hongwu back then. His eyes wandered all around to look at the nearby Taoist cultivators. Afterwards, he raised the jade tablet with both hands and bowed towards the rising sun in the east, reciting, "My name is Linghu Pihuan. I have received the hidden immortal continent's Confucian cultivators' trust to control Star Lord Palace. Today is the day that Star Lord Palace opens the Yaotai Assembly. I, the 1,000 star generals, earnestly request the Confucian cultivators' past ancestors to permit me to open the Yaotai Mountain to hold the Yaotai Assembly." And similarly, there was no difference at all. Following Linghu Pihuan's words, ray after ray of awe-inspiring qi descended from the Yaotai Mountain. That awe-inspiring qi's color was extremely dazzling. Following this rainbow-like pillar of light, another imperial edict sparkling with golden light fell from the sky. However, just as Linghu Pihuan bowed, the instant he received the imperial edict, woo! The sound of a gale's furious howl came from the distant horizon. The wind's howl in winter was originally normal, but before this howl, it unexpectedly shook all around. The heaven-earth origin energy within several tens of thousands of li seemed to be swallowed by a giant mouth as it flowed towards one place. Let alone that the crimson clouds and snowflakes in the sky were torn to shreds, even the rainbow-like pillar of light above the Yaotai Mountain violently swayed in this gale. The previous world's might was practically swept clean. This. Linghu Pihuan was stunned, shame and anger appearing on his face. While he was inwardly astonished, he slowly straightened his body. The clear light in his eyes faintly flickered, wanting to look at the origin of the gale. It was also at this moment that the sound of thunder that soared to the sky rang out again. Countless thick, dragon-like thunderbolts descended from the sky, shrouding the distant horizon. Those streaks of lightning flickered, illuminating the entire sky. Wherever they passed, the auspicious aura of the Yaotai Mountain and the rainbow-colored glow had long been covered. In front of this thunderbolt, the phenomenon that had just shocked the Taoist cultivators was like child's play. Fortune Gate. Linghu Pihuan didn't need to use the clear light at all. Seeing such a strange lightning, how could he not know what had happened? He looked at the place where the thunderbolt landed in astonishment. Seeing the flickering figures treading on clouds, he was truly puzzled in his heart. What are they doing at my Yaotai Mountain? Of course, this thought was merely a flash, and Linghu Pihuan smiled bitterly again. Although the reputation of the Fortune Gate's disciples was currently unparalleled on the hidden immortal continent, the Fortune Gate's disciples were still Taoist disciples. What were they doing at the Yaotai Mountain? Other than participating in the Yaotai Mountain meeting, other than seizing the Grand Preceptor's lot. There didn't seem to be any other reason, right? However, the Fortune Gate had already braved the universal condemnation of the world's Confucian cultivators to establish a Taoist sect. Did they still care about establishing a Taoist sect? At the same time that Linghu Pihuan came to his senses, Ji Qingzi was also dumbfounded. Looking at the thunderbolt in the distance, he couldn't care less about hiding anything, and transmitted his voice to the other cultivators. Are they Fortune Gate's disciples? Could it be that they're also here to seize the Grand Preceptor's lot? Senior. A golden core cultivator who was closer to Ji Qingzi replied bitterly, "If there's no accident, they should be." But, Ji Qingzi said, a few times, but he couldn't continue. He was even more bitter than that golden core cultivator. While these Taoist cultivators and the Confucian cultivators of the Yaotai Mountain Star Lord Hall were still in shock, in the distant horizon, 100,000 Fortune Gate's disciples clad in armor and holding magic treasures in their hands flew over in an orderly formation. The battle formation formed by these 100,000 disciples was the Golden Crow Immortal Slaying Demonic Formation. Thick bolts of lightning fell on the battle formation, turning into lightning that scattered around the disciples, entangling the clouds beneath the Fortune Gate's disciples' feet. From afar, the 100,000 disciples looked like a huge golden crow made of lightning, exuding an invincible aura. Damn it. Ling Hu Pihuan couldn't help but curse inwardly. Are they here to seize the Grand Preceptor's lot? Or are they here to destroy my Star-Lord Hall? Chapter 4591. Just as Ling Hu Piming was at a loss on how to respond, a will like that of heaven and earth emerged from the battle formation and crashed down on the Yaotai Mountain. Then, a tall and skinny figure that looked like a heavenly god flew out from the lightning, surrounded by lightning. Xiao Hua! When Ling Hu Piming saw this tall and thin figure, he actually felt a sense of relief. He held the Immortal Palace's imperial edict in his hand and watched Xiao Hua fly slowly, gathering all the light and darkness between heaven and earth on his body. He couldn't help but have mixed feelings in his heart. Ling Hu Piming knew more than Zhiqingzi, so he admired this enigmatic human race Mahayana realm even more. 300 years ago, he was the one who suggested Kong Hongwu recruit him, but 300 years later, he had become a supreme cultivator in the eyes of millions. Since Xiao Hua stood at the peak of human cultivation, then all the mysteries on the Yaotai Mountain that day had been solved. However, who would dare to mention the Yaotai Mountain gathering again? The thunder became louder and louder, and the lightning became more and more dazzling. The Fortune Gate disciples flew from the horizon to the side of the Yaotai Mountain. The several thousand Dao cultivators didn't dare to be negligent. They all tidied up their clothes and prepared to greet Xiao Hua. The monarchs who were preparing to recruit Dao cultivators under the Yaotai Mountain couldn't sit still in their tents and rushed out one by one. They didn't dare to approach and only stood respectfully on the ground, not daring to be slow in the slightest. As for the Star-Lord Hall's immortal soldiers and immortal generals, where was their previous arrogance? They were quite embarrassed and nervously gripped their weapons. They looked at the Fortune Gate disciples and secretly glanced at Ling Hu Piming, afraid that Ling Hu Piming would give the order to attack. Just when Ling Hu Piming's mouth was dry, the lightning suddenly dimmed, and even the sound of thunder was annihilated. The 100,000 Fortune Gate disciples silently scattered in all directions, surrounding the Yaotai Mountain. Ling Hu Piming had only casually swept his clear sight light over the Fortune Gate's disciple closest to him, and he couldn't help but shudder in fear. Late nascent soul realm cultivator, his grandma, an ordinary Fortune Gate's disciple, is already at the upper 4th grade of essence force. These 100,000 Fortune Gate's disciples can easily flatten my Star Monarch Hall. While Ling Hu Piliu was still feeling apprehensive, the 100,000 Fortune Gate's disciples stopped in midair, not making a sound. Xiao Hua also quietly stood in the distance, no longer approaching Yaotai Mountain. For a time, apart from the falling snow and the falling clouds, there was no other sound between heaven and earth. Seeing that the Fortune Gate disciples were motionless, Ling Hu Piming was embarrassed once again. If it was before Ling Hu Pimu received the imperial edict from the Immortal Palace, he could have flown in front of Xiao Hua and bowed respectfully, facing Xiao Hua with the etiquette of a junior. But now that he had the imperial edict in his hand and was representing the Immortal Palace, he couldn't go and greet Xiao Hua personally. However, it was impossible for Fortune Gate's disciples to come over. After all, they represented Xiao Hua and the Fortune Gate. Just like this, the awkwardness lasted for half a cup of tea's time. The Star-Lord's Hall's Star Generals' backs were sweating. They were afraid that Xiao Hua would point her finger and these 100,000 Fortune Gate disciples would attack. Sigh. Ling Hu Piming turned to look at these Star Generals, pondering for a moment, then sighed in his heart. He urged his body to move, but at this moment, Fu Jiwen in front of Xiao Hua's body flickered. A strange rune appeared, and Fu Jiwen's figure crossed the sky and landed in front of Ling Hu Piming. I, Fu Jiwen, greets Hall Master Ling Hu. Fu Jiwen did not lack etiquette, cupping his hands respectfully. Ling Hu Piming let out a long sigh of relief. He raised the imperial edict in his hand and smiled. This Hall Master is now holding the Immortal Palace's imperial edict, temporarily considered as my Immortal Palace's envoy. Due to the Immortal Palace's etiquette, This hall master is unable to perform a full greeting. Please forgive me, fellow immortal Fu. It's fine. Fu Jiwen did not mind and said, my sect master has decreed that my Fortune Gate's disciples wish to establish a country in Gun Province. According to the hidden immortal continent's customs, my Fortune Gate's disciples and other Dao sect's disciples have come to the Yaotai Mountain to participate in the Yaotai Mountain's assembly. Hall Master Ling Hu, please open the Yaotai Mountain's Dragon Gate according to the customs and place the Imperial Preceptor's lot in. Ji Qingzi looked at Xiao Hua's familiar figure in the distance and sighed. If I had known earlier that Fortune Gate's disciples would come to take the Imperial Preceptor's lot, I wouldn't have come. In this world, which Dao sect's cultivator can compete with Fortune Gate's disciples? I only hope that Fortune Gate's disciples will stop before going too far and just take a few and leave the rest for I. I can also return and give an explanation to Ancestor A. Unfortunately, what happened next made Ji Qingzi feel like he had fallen into an ice cave. Ling Hu Piming probed, fellow immortal Fu, may I ask how many Imperial Preceptors lots your sect needs? Fu Jiwen smiled and replied, no comment. After saying that, Fu Jiwen's figure returned to Xiao Hua's side. Since it's the Fortune Gate's Taoist Xiao who wants to establish a kingdom, this junior doesn't dare to compete. Before Fu Jiwen could land beside Xiao Hua, a golden core cultivator immediately bowed to Xiao Hua and left, not even leaving his name behind. Damn it. Ji Qingzi gritted his teeth. This cultivator is too opportunistic. Sure enough, after a short while, nearly 70% of the Dao sect's cultivators bowed and left. There was no lack of mid-nascent soul cultivators among them. Ji Qingzi wanted to leave at this time, but he was afraid that the Grand Mist Ancestor would punish him, so he could only brace himself and stand in the air. Seeing that more and more Dao sect's cultivators were leaving, Ling Hu Piming was also a little flustered. He did not dare to be negligent and hurriedly circulated his true qi to open the Imperial Edict. Rumble. The sound of a tide came from the Imperial Edict, just like before. Roar. A loud dragon's roar came from the tide, and soon after, a 10,000 zhang long yellow light rushed into the air. The yellow light was like a dragon leaping into the sky, dancing in the colorful light for a while before lying down on the Yaotai Mountain. An indescribable dragon's might and authority weighed down on the surroundings even more than the Yaotai Mountain. Unfortunately, today was destined to be different from previous years. Just as this dragon's might and authority rushed out of the Yaotai Mountain and landed on the Fortune Gate's disciples, a light cough like a thunder formation sounded, and the space within 100 li of the Yaotai Mountain immediately shattered. Tens of millions of lightning threads poured out from this space, and all of the dragon's might and authority were completely shattered by the yellow light like a dragon leaping into the air, scattering into pieces in the air. At this time, the voice that sounded like a big yellow bell reverberated between heaven and earth. By the will of the heavens, the hidden immortal ancestors congratulate each other. In today's enlightening Jade Pavilion Grand Meeting, the stars willed that this voice was incomparably loud and dignified, but in the ears of Ling Hu Piming and the others, they couldn't help but bitterly smile and feel awkward in their hearts. Even in the ears of Ji Qingzi and the others, this voice was far less shocking than before, not to mention the effect of melting the foundation of their Tao. With great difficulty, the voice settled. A loud sound like a wave crashing into a mountain rock rang out, and the entire imperial decree slowly closed. The imperial decree once again fell into Ling Hu Piming's hands. If it was before, Ling Hu Piming just had to send the imperial decree into the sky, and the yellow dragon would transform into a dragon gate. Unfortunately, the yellow dragon had already been shattered by Xiao Hua's cough, so how could there still be the auspicious sign of the yellow dragon transforming into a dragon gate? Ling Hu Piming was also helpless, and he still sent the imperial decree out. The imperial decree was like a meteor that soared into the sky and crashed into the sky. A huge black hole flickered, and a golden frame appeared. Xiao Hua's figure moved, and then he stopped. A wisp of Buddhist consciousness appeared, and disappeared along with the imperial decree into the black hole. At the same time, a splendor that was even more dazzling than the sun rushed out from the black hole. As everyone slightly closed their eyes, a somewhat damaged dragon gate appeared on the Jade Mountain. Linghu Piming hastily flew to the front of the dragon gate, raised his hand, and took out several jade boxes from his wide sleeve. He stole a glance at Xiao Hua, and said in a slightly loud voice, "Fellow immortals, these are several treasures that my Star Lord Hall has prepared for this Jade Pavilion Grand Meeting. If any fellow immortals are fated, feel free to look for them in the Jade Pavilion Grand Meeting." After he finished speaking, Linghu Piming did not explain what was inside these jade boxes. He raised his hand and sent them into the dragon gate. Several colored carps swallowed them, and just like before, they disappeared without a trace. Finally, Linghu Piming waved his sleeve again, and several hundred rays of multicolored light rushed out. Several hundred fist-sized, somewhat similar to the imperial scholar's lot, flew out. Linghu Piming coughed and said, "These are the 483 imperial scholars' lot for this year's Jade Pavilion Grand Meeting. My Star Lord Hall will place them within the winnowing basket water leopard, 3 water ape, and chariot water worm's 10-star arrays." Hastily saying this, Linghu Piming waved his hand. Several hundred dragon roars came from the Swanni Imperial Jade Seal. The Swanni outside the Imperial Jade Seal seemed to come alive, roaring as it brought a yellow cloud into the dragon gate and disappeared. Linghu Piming was finally relieved. He bowed towards Gao Tian and saluted, "Thank heavens for your kindness, the ceremony is complete." Immediately after, the 28 star generals looked at each other. Some star generals' faces were filled with joy, some with bitterness, and even more with schadenfreude. One by one, they urged their magic clouds to descend into the Jade Mountain. Everyone. Fu Jiwen saw all the star generals leave, loudly shouting, "Enter the array, take all of the 483 national preceptors' lots." The Fortune Gate's disciples' auras were like rainbows, and as they answered in unison, the damaged dragon gate swayed twice. Seeing the 100,000 Fortune Gate's disciples enter the dragon gate one by one like lightning, Ji Qingzi and the other Dao sect's cultivators no longer dared to hesitate. They all turned their heads toward Xiao Hua and cupped their fists, urging their figures to leave. Although the 483 imperial scholars' lot was not a small number, enough to establish 483 Dao sects countries on the hidden immortal continent, Ji Qingzi and the others did not doubt that with the Fortune Gate's strength, establishing 483 countries would be a piece of cake. After Ji Qingzi and the others left, Linghu Piming tidied his clothes and flew in front of Xiao Hua. He bowed and said, "Junior Linghu Piming has come to greet Daoist Xiao." Junior was previously holding the Immortal Palace's imperial decree, so it was inconvenient for Junior to salute. Now, Junior has specially come to ask for forgiveness. Cast a monthly vote, cast a recommendation vote, bookmark, gift, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 4592. Xiao Huan nodded slightly, glancing at Linghu Piming and saying, "I know. You don't need to mind." Linghu Piming said with a flattering smile, "Then Junior can rest assured. Apart from asking for forgiveness, Junior also wants to ask Senior. If Senior wants to establish a country, Senior only needs one imperial preceptor's signature. Furthermore, if Senior were to establish over 400 Daoist kingdoms at once, it would bring about endless trouble." Xiao Hua looked at Linghu Piming and said with a smile, "Hall Master Linghu, do you want to know the reason?" "Yes, Senior. If Senior can give pointers, Junior will be endlessly grateful." Linghu Piming said with a nod. "I can tell you. However, you have to tell me something first." Xiao Hua's gaze landed on Linghu Piming. That lightning-like gaze caused Linghu Piming to be alarmed, seemingly thinking of something. He hesitated slightly and said in a low voice, "If it doesn't involve the Immortal Palace's secrets, Junior will definitely report truthfully." Sure enough, Xiao Hua asked, "You tell me why there were only 10 Imperial Preceptors' signatures in that Jadestage summit that I participated in back then. Why did the entire Jadestage Mountain set up 3 grand formations all at once? What exactly was your goal in hunting my Dao sect's nascent soul cultivators?" Linghu Piming had a headache and said with a flattering smile, "Senior, This junior is aware of the problem that you spoke of, but I also know very little. Furthermore, this junior also really doesn't dare to reveal anything to senior. Senior, please understand. If Linghu Piming kept evading, Xiaohua might use some divine ability to search Linghu Piming's memories. But Linghu Piming was so calm, Xiaohua couldn't make things difficult for him either. However, after Xiaohua pondered slightly, he asked again via voice transmission, Linghu Piming, since that's the case, then I won't force you either. I'll ask you another matter that doesn't involve the Immortal Palace's secrets. Linghu Piming frowned, even more puzzled. Since it wasn't the Immortal Palace's secrets, why didn't Xiaohua ask but instead voice transmission? However, he didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly replied via voice transmission, Senior, please speak. As long as Junior knows, I'll definitely say everything I know. Star-Lord Hall's previous Hall Master Kong Hongwu, whose trusted aide is he? Xiaohua's eyes were fixed on Linghu Piyu, carefully observing the changes in his expression. When Linghu Piming heard this question, he immediately let out a sigh of relief. With a smile, he transmitted his voice. Senior, on the surface, Palace Master Kong Hongwu is a trusted aide of Lord Sun Peng of the Hall of Enlightenment. However, according to what I know, this Hall Master Kong is also a member of the Heaven and Earth faction. Heaven and Earth Gate. Xiaohua was startled. He seemed to have heard of this Heaven and Earth sect before, but he had never met anyone from the Heaven and Earth sect, so he was somewhat puzzled. What kind of organization is the Heaven and Earth sect? Senior. At this point, Linghu Piming had already revealed everything he knew. He hurriedly replied, the so-called Heaven and Earth sect is the Immortal Palace's Heavenly Mystery Hall's organization in the 3 continents. Inside are Heavenly Mystery Hall's secret agents. How did you know? Xiaohua raised his eyebrows and asked curiously, this matter. Who else knows? Junior is someone Palace Master Kong trusts. There are some things he does not hide from Junior. However, every year, Palace Master Kong leaves Star Sovereign Hall for a few days, and at this time, if something happens, it is Junior who deals with it. Therefore, only Junior knows about this matter. Since they were talking about a person who had died several hundred years ago, Linghu Piming did not have any psychological burden, casually telling the truth, and coincidentally, Junior also knows that these few days are the days when the Heavenly Mystery Hall's Palace Master is personally inspecting the hidden immortal mainland. How do you know? Xiaohua asked. Linghu Piming hesitated even more. He hesitated for a moment, looking at the back of the last Fortune Gate disciple who entered the Jade Mountain range. He clenched his teeth and asked, Can Senior answer Junior's question? Naturally. Xiaohua nodded and answered. Is Senior familiar with my Confucian immortal master? Linghu Piming's question was out of Xiaohua's expectations, but Xiaohua did not hesitate and nodded. Yes, this old man and Wen Xiu are old acquaintances. Hearing that his guess was the same as Xiaohua's answer, Linghu Piming did not hesitate and said, Then Junior must know the true scholar. And you don't need to say any more, this old man already knows. Xiaohua instantly understood that this Linghu Piming was a trusted aide of a true scholar. He naturally knew some secrets of the Heavenly Mystery Hall. Many thanks, Senior. Seeing that Xiaohua did not ask any more questions, Linghu Piming expressed his gratitude. In fact, when Xiaohua and Gusu Qiudi left Jade Mountain Range, Linghu Piming had the opportunity to report to the Immortal Palace. But he reported to the true scholar first, and the true scholar's reply was concealed. But just by leaving for a few days. I'm afraid it's not easy to determine Kong Hongwu's background, right? Xiaohua asked again. Linghu Piming didn't really understand why the dead Kong Hongwu was worth Xiaohua's repeated confirmation. However, he still honestly replied, Senior, please know that this junior. After Kong Hongwu died, this junior temporarily took charge of Star-Lord Hall. This junior knew that there were some secrets in Star-Lord Hall that belonged to Kong Hongwu. Thus, the place where Kong Hongwu usually lived, before this junior received the order from the Immortal Palace. This junior didn't dare to rashly enter. However, after this junior entered, I discovered that the places that this junior had previously marked had all changed. are the heavenly mystery hall's actions. Good. Xiao Hua nodded. This old man understands. Then, can Senior tell this junior why the Fortune Gate's disciples snatched all the Imperial Preceptor's lots? Ling Hu Piming asked. This matter concerns this junior's future. This junior cannot not ask. It's very simple. Xiao Hua smiled. First, this old man wants to establish a country in Shao Country. Shao Country? Ling Hu Piming was shocked. Then Senior's Shao Country, isn't it the biggest Dao Gate on the hidden immortal mainland? No, the biggest empire that surpasses all the Confucian cultivation countries? Ling Hu Piming, you must remember, the Fortune Gate's Shao Country is a paradise in the hearts of the common people. Although it is the biggest country on the hidden immortal mainland, is not called an empire. Since the previous scholars from various families were willing to preserve this paradise, then this old man will also preserve this paradise. Remember, it is to be preserved as a paradise. If anyone wants to touch the Shao Country, don't blame us, the Fortune Gate's disciples, for being ruthless. Xiao Hua said with a smile, but there was a hint of coldness in his voice. Yes, this junior understands. This junior will immediately send a message to the Immortal Palace. Ling Hu Piming's expression changed slightly, bowing as he said, Many thanks for Senior's reminder. Don't be anxious, don't be anxious. Xiao Hua stretched out a finger and shook it. This old man has news that will make the Immortal Palace even more excited. Senior, please speak. Ling Hu Piming's face turned even paler. This old man wants to ask you, as the Star Sovereign Palace's Hall Master, do you know the way to the Immortal Palace? Xiao Hua stared at Ling Hu Piming and asked again. Cold sweat appeared on Ling Hu Piming's back as he carefully said, Senior may not know, but when this junior needs to return to the Immortal Palace will send an order, and this junior will be able to find the way back with the order. However, if this junior does not need to return to the Immortal Palace, this junior will definitely not be able to find the Immortal Palace. Of course, if Senior snatches this junior's order, Senior should be able to find the Immortal Palace, and this junior will have to bear the heavy punishment. Don't be afraid. Xiao Hua replied, How can this old man snatch your order? This old man's purpose of taking the Imperial Preceptor's lot is to find the Immortal Palace. Senior, Ling Hu Piming hurriedly called out, Why are you going to the Immortal Palace? You are a Dao Gates Grand Ascension Stage expert. A Dao Gates Grand Ascension Stage expert cannot go to the Immortal Palace. Xiao Hua sneered, What kind of rule is this? But Ling Hu Piming was somewhat speechless. No one could forbid a Dao Gates Grand Ascension Stage expert from going to the Immortal Palace, not even Immortal Emperor Go Chen. But the problem was that the Immortal Palace's Confucian cultivators and Dao Gates cultivators were enemies. Xiao Hua, a Dao Gates Grand Ascension Stage expert, was swaggering around the Confucian cultivators' Immortal Palace, not provoking them. At this moment, Ling Hu Piming suddenly realized something and exclaimed, I understand, Senior. You want to use the Imperial Preceptor's lot to go to the Immortal Palace? Correct. Xiao Hua glanced sideways at the Jade Mountain's Dragon Gate. At this moment, that Dragon Gate's Dragon Gate was shaking, and Fortune Gate's disciples had already begun to rush out. 100,000 Fortune Gate's disciples were pressing down on the Jade Mountain. Not to mention a dozen star arrays. Even if the entire Jade Mountain was opened and the 3 star arrays were placed on the Jade Mountain, the Star Lord Hall's star generals wouldn't dare to go overboard and stop these fierce generals. After the first Fortune Gate's disciple flew out, even more Fortune Gate's disciples rushed out. These Fortune Gate's disciples all flew in front of Fujiwen, and after handing over the Imperial Preceptor's lot, they stood in midair. Can Junior take his leave now? Seeing that more than 400 disciples had already flown out, Ling Hu Piming's face flushed red. This was the shortest Jade Pavilion assembly in history, and if there were no accidents, there wouldn't be such a short record in the future. Go. Xiao Hua nodded. You can report this matter to the Immortal Palace. Many thanks, Senior. Ling Hu Piming bowed and hurriedly flew into the Jade Mountain. In the time it took to exchange a few words, Fujiwen looked at the Imperial Preceptor's lot that he had put into his cosmos sack and flew over. The Fortune Gate's disciples that flew out from the Jade Mountain no longer looked at Fujiwen, and all flew in midair in formation. Master. Fujiwen passed the cosmos sack to Xiaohua and said, "There are 483 Imperial Preceptor's lots, not one less." Good. Xiaohua received the cosmos sack, and his divine sense swept over it. He took out a lot and said, "Let this disciple bring this back to the soaring Dragon Mountain range and give it to His Highness Lan. Let him establish the Shao country." Yes, Master. Fujiwen took the Imperial Preceptor's lot and flew into the distance. After giving a few instructions, the disciple took the Imperial Preceptor's lot and flew away. Chapter 4593. Swoosh. In the distant sky, an obscure energy fluctuation flashed and rushed towards the horizon, disappearing in an instant. If he guessed correctly, it should be Ling Hu Piming sending a message to the Immortal Palace. Xiaohua snorted coldly, inwardly thinking, 1 day in the heavens, 1 year on Earth. The Immortal Palace is obviously inside a space-time vortex. Even if Ling Hu Piming's message reaches the Immortal Palace, as long as it breaks through the time barrier, time will immediately slow down. Before this message reaches the High Cloud Hall, this Shao will have arrived. This kind of message. What use is it? After waiting for half an incense stick's time, the Fortune Gate's disciples finally came out from the Dragon Gate. When the last disciple passed through the Dragon Gate, Ling Hu Piming's figure flickered a few times inside the Dragon Gate as if he was bowing to Xiaohua. Then, with a loud bang, the Dragon Gate closed from top to bottom, and the thousands of colorful carps turned into dragons and disappeared into the void. All the golden lights disappeared at the same time, and the snowflakes that resembled the jade juju flower once again fluttered down, covering everything under the cover of time. Xiaohua stared at Yao Juxue for a moment, then waved his hand and took out the Kunlun mirror. A beam of light swept over all the Fortune Gate's disciples and sucked them into the Shenhua continent. Soon after, Xiaohua took out an Imperial Preceptor's lot from his Jiankuan pouch. As he activated his magic power, a crackling sound rang out. The restrictions on the surface of the Imperial Preceptor's lot were all broken. As Xiaohua raised his hand and pointed at the Bai, an angry howl was heard. The Bai turned into an ordinary jade seal, and the Bai An's shadow condensed from inscriptions soared into the sky and flew to a place like lightning. Even someone as strong as Xiaohua did not dare to be careless. He released his divine sense and hurriedly chased after the phantom. After Xiaohua was far away, Ling Hu Piming walked out from the Yaodai Mountain. He smiled wryly as he looked at the various countries' monarchs who were preparing to leave. Looking at the excitement on their faces, he sighed, "Granny, I'm afraid this old man will become a laughingstock in the future." However, after Ling Hu Piming finished sighing, he looked at the direction Xiaohua disappeared in, and muttered to himself thoughtfully, "But if there are too many laughingstocks, and even the Immortal Palace becomes a laughingstock, then will a laughingstock still be a laughingstock?" Xiaohua naturally wouldn't care about who became the laughingstock. As he urged the lightning evasion technique to chase after the State Preceptor's lot, he inwardly pondered, "Today, I gained a lot on Yaodai Mountain. I'm afraid that Ling Hu Piming would never have thought that he would personally tell this Shao a great secret." I obtained the Jiuzhou Cauldron from Kong Hongwu's Qiankuan bag, and it was because of the Jiuzhou Cauldron that I was sent to the heavenly prison. Therefore, the master behind Kong Hongwu should be the same as Sun Cheng and Sun Hao's master. They should be from Tianji Palace, not the so-called patrol envoy. Sun Jian had returned to the Immortal Palace for so long, but there was still no news of him finding Sun Hao. Sun Hao had probably found out and had hidden himself long ago. Although this Shao didn't have time to ask by and about Tianji Palace, as long as this Shao arrives at the Immortal Palace and transmits this matter to Sun Jian, wouldn't the truth be revealed? While Xiaohua was pondering, the State Preceptor's lot had already disappeared. Xiaohua had no choice but to once again activate another State Preceptor's lot. The State Preceptor's lot once again gave birth to a shadow. This shadow flew in a different direction from the previous one, so Xiaohua had to change direction again to chase after it. In this way, after nearly 100 state preceptors' lots were used up, Xiaohua arrived at a somewhat strange place. However, he saw that near this space, his divine sense couldn't pass through, as if it was blocked by mud. Moreover, not only was there no heaven and earth origin qi near this space, even the righteous qi couldn't be seen. When Xiaohua flew, his figure was stretched extremely long, and the sound of the lightning evasion also began to become hoarse. Xiaohua had previously passed through the time turbulence, so he knew that he should have arrived near another time turbulence. Although he hadn't entered the time turbulence yet, the fragments of the time rules had already begun to interfere in the nearby time turbulence. Xiaohua stood in the space, but he wasn't in a hurry to take out the state preceptor's lot. He raised his hand and patted his forehead, and the delusion breaker Dharma eye between his eyebrows opened. Sure enough, in the delusion breaker Dharma eye, Xiaohua's surroundings were filled with thread-like fluctuations. These fluctuations were dark in color, and as they overflowed, there was a kind of extremely faint cloud in the air. The cloud and mist not only blocked divine sense, but also could cover the delusion breaker Dharma eye. Xiaohua flew for a while, dodging these clouds and mist, and he could see clearly again. In the distant darkness, there were hundreds of dark green little dots flickering in the darkness. These little dots were like sesame seeds, and couldn't even compare to the brilliance of ordinary fireflies. "I'm afraid this is a maze." Xiaohua's hand pinched his chin as he thought to himself. Soon after, he activated another state preceptor's lot. Whoosh! The shadow flew out, turning into a yellow inscription and rushing into one of the little dots. Xiaohua hurriedly used the lightning escape technique to chase after it. This halo landed on the Imperial Preceptor's lot phantom and transformed into an even smaller vortex. At the mouth of this vortex, the Imperial Preceptor's lot phantom fell into this vortex and didn't appear again. Xiaohua closed his delirium eyes. The space around Xiaohua was similar to the void, and there was nothing special about it. Xiaohua urged his body to fly towards the Imperial Preceptor's lot phantom. But after flying for 1,000 feet, Xiaohua felt the space begin to slowly vibrate, and then the space separated into layers. The layers began to move up and down, and his body also moved along with the space, leaving behind a seemingly solid phantom in each layer of space. Moreover, these phantom layers began to extend and stretch. When there were more than 1,000 of these phantoms, there was a loud bang, and a layer of space in front of Xiaohua's head gave birth to a 5-colored cloud, blocking Xiaohua's path. Layers of cobweb-like inscription chains overflowed in the cloud, and a loud sound came from the crisscrossing inscription chains. A majestic and shocking aura was also born from the inscription chains. Xiaohua understood that it was time to verify his identity here. He didn't have a token of the Immortal Palace, so if he wanted to pass, he could only force his way through. Therefore, Xiaohua didn't hesitate. His right hand clenched into a fist, and wisps of lightning condensed on the surface of his fist, converging into a net, and thumb-sized talismans flashed with a mysterious golden light in the lightning. As Xiaohua's right fist swung out, the space for several miles around him began to wrinkle, and layers of world's origin qi seeped out from the wrinkles, turning into fist-sized crystals that fell into the lightning. The lightning turned into a dragon, and with the power of space, it rushed into the blockade of the inscription chains with unparalleled force. The lightning was like a supreme will, and the chains were like strict order. When the will met the order, a loud bang sounded. Wherever the lightning passed, the chains were broken, and the thousands of scattered inscriptions were destroyed as soon as they touched the powerful lightning, turning into pure awe-inspiring qi. In the awe-inspiring qi, the lightning became more vigorous and constantly grew stronger. Although more and more inscription chains waved like tentacles, trying to seal the lightning, all the chains were defeated in just a moment. Seeing a hole of 1,000 feet in size appearing in the blockade of the inscription chains, Xiaohua urged his figure to calmly pass through it. Xiaohua's figure had just passed through the blockade, and in front of him was an immortal palace hidden by 5-colored clouds. A towering heavenly gate of 1,000 feet in size stood in front of Xiaohua. Unfortunately, before Xiaohua could see the heavenly gate clearly, he heard a roar, "Bold thief, you actually dare to trespass the heavenly gate of southern heaven? How dare you?" Chapter 45-94. Following this furious roar, an immortal general even larger than Kwa Chong of the Sun Palace appeared in front of Xiaohua with 2 hammers the size of hills in his hands. Behind him, thousands of immortal soldiers flew over with weapons in their hands, wanting to surround Xiaohua. "This old man is Dao Gate's Xiaohua." Xiaohua looked at the immortal general flying over and stopped. He said indifferently, "Today, I came to the immortal palace to request an audience with immortal Emperor Gaochen. This old man has something to ask him. Please return and report it to him." The immortal general snorted and shouted, "Damned evil path! Trespassing into the immortal palace is a capital offense. Hand over your life." As he spoke, the celestial general's body suddenly expanded. His mountain-like hammer streaked across the sky with a whoosh and smashed down like a meteor. A huge gust of wind enveloped the space around Xiaohua. Xiaohua frowned slightly. With a wave of his Taoist robe, an unparalleled force came out of his Taoist robe and collided with the hammer's force. The seemingly incomparably powerful hammer had a powerful momentum. With a wave of his Taoist robe, the space shattered and the force was annihilated. Even the hammer flew out like a piece of paper. The immortal general's body tumbled a few times in the air before he managed to stabilize himself. His face, which had been filled with arrogance earlier, was now filled with astonishment and surprise. As for the thousands of immortal soldiers, they were even more at a loss. They held their weapons and didn't know whether to surround or defend. "Your Grand Mist ancestor?" The immortal general shouted in shock. "You actually dare to cause trouble in the immortal palace, you. This old man is Dao Gate's Xiaohua." Xiaohua looked at the immortal general who didn't even know his name and said indifferently, "Quickly report to Ling Yun Palace." "Xiaohua." The immortal general was stunned at first, then his entire body trembled. He shouted in shock, "Your Fortune Gate's Xiaohua? Also came to cause trouble in the immortal palace?" This old man didn't come to cause trouble in the immortal palace. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "This old man has something to ask immortal Emperor Gaochen. Quickly go and report this." Phew! The immortal general heaved a long sigh of relief. He stood up, tidied up his armor, and mustered his courage. He cupped his fists and said, "I am the Southern Heavenly Gate's Guardian General, Kuai Yu. Greetings, Taoist Xiao." Xiaohua raised his hand. "Spiritual Master, please wait here for a moment. I will inform Heavenly King Fu Yu and ask him to make a decision." Kuai Yu saw Xiaohua's amiable face and asked tentatively. Of course, Xiaohua didn't mind. He nodded and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you." Kuai Yu was overjoyed. After bowing to Xiaohua, he gave a few orders to the immortal soldiers and rushed into the Southern Heaven Gate. After the immortal soldiers flew back to the Southern Heaven Gate, Xiaohua placed his hands behind his back and looked up at the lofty Southern Heaven Gate while sighing with emotion in his heart. He had never been to the Southern Heaven Gate before, but he felt a sense of familiarity when he looked at it. This was because he had seen the Southern Heaven Gate when he first came to the hidden immortal continent. However, that Southern Heaven Gate was in an illusion. He remembered that day at the Longevity Town, when Mo Jianli, Zhu Junfeng, and the others worked together to create an illusion of an immortal palace from a small vermilion gourd, which made Xiaohua truly admire it. Now, even though Xiaohua didn't see any heaven-suppressing martial or any golden-armored deities, the Southern Heavenly Gate that was made of jade was exactly the same as the Southern Heavenly Gate in the illusion. Back then, I only thought about how to recover my cultivation and how to step into the nascent soul stage. I never thought about seeing the real Southern Heaven Gate. However, in just a few tens of thousands of years, I have already reached the peak of cultivation and was only one step away from ascending. Now, I am standing in front of the Southern Heaven Gate to have a face-to-face conversation with the Confucian supremacy, immortal Emperor Go-Chen. Thinking about it carefully, There is nothing more in the world than this. No matter how high one's goal is, no matter how big one's dream is, as long as one has the right direction, one can walk step by step, stand up when one falls, correct one's mistakes. As long as one has enough endurance, one will eventually reach the end of the road and see the realization of one's dream. What a pity! Although the southern heavenly gate shines with golden light and red light and emits purple mist, no matter how you look at it, it still looks a little cold. The immortal palace is Xion's immortal palace, and also Xion's home, but there is no Xion at the door. Even if it is endlessly auspicious, how can it compare to the Guozhuang house in my heart? Although the Guozhuang house is small, it has parents. Although they are poor, they have children in their hearts. It is 10,000 times better than this immortal palace with its strict immortal rules. Xion will definitely like it. The immortal soldiers looked at Xiao Hua, who was as steady as Mount Tai, and their palms were sweating. They stared at Xiao Hua, afraid that he would explode and hurt someone. However, how could they have known that Xiao Hua's heart had already flown to the Guozhuang house? Just as the immortal soldiers were in a state of shock, waves of vast energy rushed out from all directions of the immortal palace. Multicolored clouds also flew over from all directions of the immortal palace. At the same time, waves of baleful energy surged along with the clouds and energy pillars, quickly gathering inside the southern heaven gate. Thousands of cryptic fluctuations also emerged from the southern heaven gate and spread to the surrounding space. As these ripples spread out, strands of strange light appeared like swimming fishes, filling the space between Xiao Hua and the southern heavenly gate. Xiao Hua snorted coldly and withdrew his homesickness. His gaze fell on the light. He saw that the extremely nervous immortal soldiers at the southern heaven gate had already relaxed. They looked at Xiao Hua with ridicule, as if they were looking at a fish that had walked into a trap. The southern gate of heaven shook like a cannon. Intense light flashed at the southern gate of heaven, and several huge inscription chains intertwined and rushed out. The inscription chains were like pythons. When the inscription chains flew out of the southern gate of heaven, they lined up in front of Xiao Hua. Dozens of immortal generals wearing armor, holding halberds, whips, sabers, and swords, revealed themselves. The immortal general at the front raised his halberd and pointed at Xiao Hua with the tip of the halberd. "Ignorant demon, do you know where this is?" Xiao Hua looked at this immortal general from top to bottom. His expression did not change, he was simply too lazy to answer. Who would have thought that this immortal general would not give up? He still arrogantly shouted, "This is the immortal palace. Don't you know? It's one thing for you to be a frog in a well in the hidden immortal continent. We immortal generals did not receive the immortal emperor's order to conquer, so we turned a blind eye and pretended not to know. Today, you actually dared to provoke my southern heaven gate. If I don't teach you a lesson, do you really think you are crazy?" Xiao Hua coldly swept his gaze over that immortal general. He slightly raised his hand and flicked his middle finger. A bolt of lightning appeared from Xiao Hua's hand and shot out like an arrow. Before the immortal general could finish speaking, that bolt of lightning had already landed in front of him. The immortal general was shocked. He did not care about his sharp tongue and hurriedly waved his halberd. A righteous aura mixed with a sharp aura chopped towards the bolt of lightning. That immortal general's skill was also exceptional. He used the halberd's tip to hit the bolt of lightning. However, the seemingly invisible bolt of lightning hit the halberd. A loud sound rang out. That immortal general was as if he was struck by lightning. His entire body trembled and his halberd was sent flying. The immortal general turned pale with fright and hurriedly flew back. The immortal generals beside him also moved and blocked in front of him, guarding against Xiao Hua's pursuit. "Ignorant brat." Xiao Hua coldly snorted and said, "Don't make this old man angry again." Otherwise, Xiao Hua did not finish speaking. He still stood proudly in front of the immortal generals with his hands behind his back. That immortal general stabilized himself and shouted, "Who are you?" Xiao Hua unhappily glanced at this immortal general. He was too lazy to pay attention to this immortal general. He had a good temper. If he encountered the Grand Mist Ancestor, he would have taken this immortal general's life in one blow. Quick, form the Golden Jade Sky Lock Great Formation. Seeing that Xiao Hua did not answer, that immortal general waved his hand and said, "Yes, General." Hearing the order, the immortal general on the left responded. He moved his body and began to form the formation. In just a moment, a great formation was arranged in the air. This great formation flashed with golden light. Lines of inscriptions that were dozens of feet thick intertwined and shuttled through each immortal general's body. Every immortal general's body in the formation emitted a clear light. This clear light was lustrous and pure like the blue sky. Every thick inscription that fell into the blue sky would reveal a lock. This lock had a mysterious inscription and a shocking aura surged out from it. What was special was that after every inscription rushed out from the edge of the Great Formation, it fell into the southern heavenly gate behind the Great Formation. The entire southern heavenly gate also transformed into a huge inscription that firmly protected the immortal palace. Bang! Seeing that the Great Formation was completed, that immortal general's confidence increased greatly. He pointed at Xiao Hua and said, "Who are you? You dare to trespass into the immortal palace? Don't you know that this is a violation of the immortal law?" Xiao Hua glanced at that immortal general. He did not want to answer, but when he thought about it, he came to find immortal Emperor Go Qin to inquire about new information. He did not really want to attack the immortal palace. Even if he wanted to fall out with them, wouldn't that have to wait until the end? There was no need for him to rashly fall out with the immortal palace when the situation was unclear. Thus, Xiao Hua replied indifferently, "This old man is Xiao Hua of the Fortune Gate. Today, I came to the immortal palace to ask for an audience with immortal Emperor Go Qin. All of you, quickly go and report this." Fortune Gate. Hearing Xiao Hua speak, that immortal general was stunned. He looked around and asked with some surprise, "Did this general hear wrongly? When did the hidden immortal continent have a Tao cultivator sect?" I know. At the edge of the Great Formation, a few immortal generals came to their senses and shouted, "A few days ago, the mysterious Yellow Order updated the mysterious Yellow Order, and all the people on it are disciples of the Fortune Gate. Many of my heavenly king palace's generals lost to the lunar temple. Presumably, this Tao cultivator should be someone on the mysterious Yellow Order, right? Give it as a reward, and thank you for all your support." Chapter 4595. No wonder he's so arrogant. That immortal general still hadn't reported his name. Hearing his subordinate's explanation, he sneered, "Seems like he has some tricks up his sleeve." However, the so-called profound yellow list is a hunting list for us Confucian cultivators. Being on it doesn't necessarily bring you any glory. Xiao Hua didn't reply. He merely looked on as the immortal generals stomped their feet like clowns. He knew that the Tao sect had been in decline for a long time, and these immortal generals had always been arrogant. Even though he was a grand ascension stage cultivator of the Tao sect, this news might not have reached their ears. Even if this news reached their ears, they would only treat it as a rumor. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. Not to mention, the immortal palace was different from the hidden immortal continent. The Fortune Gate's disciples purged the profound yellow list 50 years ago, and the lunar temple was defeated in the soaring Dragon Mountain range 50 years ago. In the eyes of these immortal generals, it was only a few dozen days ago. How could they know about his reputation on the hidden immortal continent? The immortal general was stunned by Xiao Hua's methods, but when he heard that Xiao Hua was a Fortune Gate disciple, he had a plan in his heart. He smiled and said, "The lunar temple's son Gu is an idiot. He snatched the immortal emperor's decree from my heavenly king palace and wanted to take advantage of it. Who would have thought that he would be defeated in a small soaring Dragon Mountain range? Now, I'll let Sun Gu see who is the #1 general below the heavenly king." With that, the immortal general raised his hand and shouted, "Generals, listen to my command." Xiao Hua couldn't take it anymore and snorted coldly. His voice was like a sharp needle that pierced into the immortal generals' minds. There's a saying in the mortal world that it's easy to meet the king of hell, but difficult to hide from the little ghosts. This old man just wants to meet immortal Emperor Go Qin. Why can't I even enter the southern heavenly gate after waiting for so long? This old man has already told all of you. Don't make this old man angry, or you won't be able to bear the consequences. The immortal general sneered, "You're just a Tao Gate cultivator. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Do you think the master of the immortal palace, the supreme cultivator of the human race, is someone you can meet whenever you want?" Alright. When Xiaohua heard this, he was truly helpless. He really didn't know who the person who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth was. However, he understood that if he didn't use some methods, who knew what kind of unpleasant words this immortal general who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth would say. The immortal general roared, and many immortal generals attacked at the same time. Dozens of immortal generals disappeared in the clear light, and the clear light transformed into a blue sky. Hundreds of python-like inscription chains formed a huge golden lock and rushed toward Xiaohua. Behind this golden lock, the southern heavenly gate also produced a ray of light that soared into the sky. A force that could lock the heavens and earth instantly sealed the space around Xiaohua for dozens of miles. If Xiaohua was below the 9th level of elemental power, he might have activated a magic treasure or waved the wishful staff. If Xiaohua had not entered the Star Moon Palace, he might have activated the Hand of Thunder or used his Transcendence Golden Body. However, Xiaohua, who had reached the peak of the 9th level of elemental power and had experienced the law of space in the meteor belt and the resplendent sea of stars in the Star Moon Palace, and the law of time in the ghost plane. His use of magic had reached a point where he could do as he pleased. Seeing that the large formation had locked the space around him, he just smiled and stretched out his finger, pointing slightly in front of himself. There was a crisp sound, and a ball-shaped lightning was born in the space. Then, the lightning spread wildly. This spread was not random, but it spread along the flaws of the golden jade heaven lock array. In just the blink of an eye, the lightning shattered all these flaws, and then a wave of cracking sounds could be heard as the space in an area of a few tens of kilometers collapsed. The Green Heaven Goldlock Grand Formation had been destroyed by a single point of Xiaohua's finger. Not only that, where the lightning passed, it also cleverly triggered the counterforce of the large formation, madly rushing into the bodies of the dozens of immortal generals. Pa. There was another series of chaotic sounds, and the uncontrollable genuine qi rushed out of the immortal generals' bodies. Not only did it crash into the air, it also hit their immortal armors. While fresh blood gushed out, dozens of the weaker immortal generals withered in midair. The leading immortal general was even more seriously injured, and blood was seeping out of his 7 orifices. At this time, no matter how ignorant he was, he knew that he had kicked an iron plate. He looked at Xiaohua in disbelief, opened his mouth, but could not speak for a long time, because he did not know what to say. He also did not believe that a Taoist cultivator could have such a high cultivation. This old man's name is not on the mysterious yellow proclamation. Xiaohua looked at the immortal general and said proudly, "Because the mysterious yellow proclamation does not contain this old man's name. The Fortune Gate's disciples who clean the mysterious yellow proclamation are all this old man's disciples and juniors. This old man is the Fortune Gate's sect master." Ah? The inscriptions on the Confucian robe were overflowing, and the golden light on the short armor was flickering, illuminating half of the sky. Looking at the secondary body's head again, it was wearing a crown, and the auspicious aura on the crown covered the secondary body's appearance. Pictures of battles on the battlefield flashed out from the flowing auspicious aura. Under the crown was not auspicious aura, but 2 rays of light, which were precisely the light and darkness. These 2 rays of light were completely different in color, and they were like 2 huge dragons. Not only were they cruising around the secondary body, but they were also crashing into the surrounding space, landing on the secondary body by a fluke. Wherever the secondary body passed by, space swayed and almost collapsed. Countless majestic pillars of air rushed out from the folds of space and roared as they merged into the secondary body. Layers of dragon roars and tiger roars came from the secondary body's large strides. Heh! Xiaohua sneered. With a shake of his arms, Kachacha. Rumbling sounds rang out everywhere. Countless lightning-like crystal lights surged out from the void and crazily landed on Xiaohua's body. At the same time, thunderous rumbles came from Xiaohua's body. These thunderous rumbles resonated with the thunderous rumbles, and they shattered the layers of space that were previously sealed by the two rays of light. Just as the space shattered, Xiaohua also transformed into his transcendence golden body that was tens of thousands of feet tall. The golden body was surrounded by lightning, and tiny threads of lightning were like dragons swimming around. They also roared angrily. Inside the shattered space, the majestic southern heavenly gate and the stunned immortal generals all turned into broken mirrors and scattered in the darkness. In the entire space, there seemed to only be light and lightning. Roar. The person who came roared, louder than the creation of the world, and the light curtain of the entire space shone brightly. The person who came didn't seem to have any posture, but he suddenly raised his arm. At this time, his arm was like a mountain range that floated in the clouds in the sky. This mountain range had two colors. The light was like the mountains that were folded by the sunlight, and the darkness was like an endless abyss. Where the arm landed, the light and darkness fell into the clouds that previously covered the sky. The entire space was suddenly sealed, and the light covered from top to bottom, and the darkness rolled from bottom to top. In the bright clouds, chains of inscriptions entangled and whipped down, and each inscription on each chain gave birth to a different chanting sound. This sound was sonorous and powerful, mighty and domineering, and an unparalleled majesty and spirit fell down. At the same time, countless sounds of weapons and horses rang out like a zither, shattering the space in front of Xiaohua inch by inch. Inscriptions appeared in every inch of space, isolating the heaven and earth yuan qi. In the dark clouds, there were also chains of inscriptions, but these chains of inscriptions were different from before. They were all sawtooth, and on the sawtooth of each chain, there was a faint bloody light. Each sawtooth of each chain was also composed of many inscriptions. These inscriptions were dark in color, mixed with the color of blood. These inscriptions also gave birth to chanting sounds, but this sound was flattering and mixed with wailing. An indescribable softness and coldness gushed out, shaking the space under Xiaohua's feet into a sticky, venom-like slurry. Streaks of heaven and earth yuan qi crystals fell into this slurry space and instantly turned into nothingness. That you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.